All right, I got 5 o'clock. Are we all here? Let the record show it is Monday, August the 24th, and this is the Community Redevelopment Agency meeting. We'll call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, if I can get you to call the roll, please.
Yes, sir. 1 second. Sorry.
Sure.
I have Gary Paytow,
I'm here.
Samuel Hall,
Here.
Jeffrey Jones,
Here.
Francis Pawlowski,
Here.
and Art Graham.
I'm here. Everybody, welcome back. Let's approve the minutes of our last meeting.
Nope. Don't have
Do we have
minutes.
minutes?
No, sir.
I was gonna say, I
No.
don't remember minutes. Okay, any old business?
No, sir.
Okay. Before we do new business, let's hear from our buddies at Cape. Mr. Evans.
Hello, how's everybody doing?
Great.
Awesome.
Fine.
That sounded convincing from all of you. So well, I do have a couple of things. As far as in the downtown Cape and really with our city, all of our bars are pretty much all open now. The ones that did not have the proper kitchens and that type thing, they have gone through the proper channels of the state and have supplied them with documentation and have modified their businesses to have some type of food. So we all are back open. Pretty much all of our bars are back open. But now they're selling some type of food to go along with it. We still are at 50% occupancy and they have to close at midnight. With that being said, we don't have at this point, I've talked with Sergeant Sharp, we don't have any issues because of that. Our numbers are still down. We're starting to see more people come out, but it's nothing like we were pre-pandemic type situation. I will update you. Yesterday, you may see it on the media tonight, or you may have already seen it. We did have an armed carjacking from Jack's Beach as an ongoing investigation. My detective unit is involved as well. We're working with us, the sheriff's office, along with Clay County. Basically, I can't tell you a whole lot because it is an ongoing investigation. But the people from the other side of town, they do not reside at the beaches. They were in a BMW and they took a Jeep at gunpoint. We were able to pursue that. We found the vehicle. We pursued them all the way up to Merrill Road, up all the way up past Regency. JSO picked up, assisted. And the reason we did pursue it is because it was an aggravated felony. Make a long story short, the vehicle was located over off of MLK Parkway. And we do have one, possibly two arrests. We've got one arrest already, and we've got a possible second coming. There may have been some shots fired, but not out here at the beach. It all took place prior to them coming out here. So we were able to recover the vehicle and get the suspect vehicle. So that did initiate in the CRA, but it was just kind of one of those things because the people were in their car and this happened right there at the Ritz parking lot. And that happened last night. Early morning last night. So that's pretty much all I have.
Mark, I got a question for you. Us closing everything down at midnight is a decision that we made here locally. That's not something that the governor put upon us. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, it's because everything goes till midnight. Then we have extended hours permits, and basically all those have been stopped. So, and that's locally up until the midnight time.
I've walked through that area, our downtown area, probably twice after midnight in the last 2 weeks. I'm actually kind of pleased with it being all shut down at midnight. Is that something, has anybody talked about going back to 2 a.m. or are we going to stay at midnight?
That's way above my pay grade. I will tell you, I'm speaking from my people, and I have been here 31 years as of June. They are very happy with the outcome. But that goes way above and beyond me, so I don't know what the intentions are. If you wanted to keep it at midnight, it would not bother any of us.
Now, is that something that our city council can only do because we're in an emergency situation, or is that something that they can change into perpetuity if they choose to?
Yeah, it's because the way it's written. So right now, with everything going on, I believe the mayor is the one that enacted it, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Maybe Bill or one of the others may know for sure, but I do know because it did lead up because of the situation we were in. No different than if we've got a national, like a storm coming or something like that, they're able to close it as well.
Okay. Board members, anybody have a question for Kate or Mr. Evans? Yeah, Samuel.
Yes, Mark, what do you do to enforce the guidelines? Do you can you issue citations or something if someone is not in compliance? How does that work?
Referring to what? You mean like social distancing or overoccupied or what?
Yes, if they go beyond the 50% occupancy rate, things of that nature. I'm just curious.
Right. What we have done since the very minute it went into effect, basically, if we get a call, let's just say, for example, Samuel Hall's beer bar on First Street is way over 50%. We will go up there. If it is clear and convincing evidence, meaning there are a ton of people and they're all standing around and they're drinking, it's a regular, a year ago night, as far as visually, what we will do is we will contact the management and we will get compliance. If we have to, then we can get with the fire marshal as well. However, the majority of the calls, a lot of them are judgment calls. And when we go there, if it's not clear and convincing, what we have instructed our supervisors to do is if their officers say, okay, let's say we go to Shimshannon, we go to Surfers or whatever, it's not clear and convincing. If we do a head count, it may or may not come out above. We take photographs and then we submit it through the Department of State. And there is a website to where everybody in the state, it's not just law enforcement, anybody can file one of these and it goes against the business and then it's investigated through the state. So if it's not clear and convincing, that's what we have them do. Our supervisors will do that form and submit that electronically. If it is clear and convincing, and we've had, I think, only two that I can remember, and one for sure. They shot me the picture. Sergeant Sharp, who runs that section down there, it was obvious these people were way over occupancy. We talked to management and we got it rectified right then. And at that point, it's up to us. Either one, we can issue them a violation of our alcohol ordinance, which could possibly take them before the magistrate, or we can file it with the state. And that's what we did last time. We did get a complaint. Once we went to the management, they already knew there was an issue. It kind of got out of hand. They got it back under control, and we were all happy with the outcome. The situation was rectified right then on the spot, and we were okay with it.
Okay.
Mark, I got a question for you, or to Bill Mann. Has our resolution about the parking in the downtown area gone before City Council yet?
I can answer that. No, but I am scheduled to be on a city council briefing to determine whether or not they have a desire to bring it forward as an amendment to chapter 28. And that's the next council meeting, which is Tuesday the 8th. And I'm the first item on a council briefing. So that's where that will be discussed.
Okay. Board members, any other questions for downtown Cape? Okay, Gary?
Mark, just a quick question. What do you see as being the biggest challenge from a policing standpoint in the downtown district right now?
You mean right now as the way because we're in the middle of COVID, not everything's at 100%, or on a normal day?
Presently, exactly where we are today, what do you see as being the biggest policing challenge?
I think with right as we are currently, we do still have the patrons out. Not all of our bars have hired the off-duty officers back. So on a normal day, we would have officers working off-duty at the majority of those bars. So that puts people there on site. So we can get, if there is an incident that rises to police action, we're there we're already there on site. So is what we're seeing now. I don't want to jinx ourselves, but we're running pretty good. My downtown Cape people, this is the first time we've been full, and everything is working very, very well. We did have the, like I said, the armed carjacking last night. That could have happened anywhere. When we talked to the suspect, I mean, they don't live here. They just happened to be here. They saw the Jeep and they wanted the Jeep and they took it. Other than that, I think we're running pretty good. If you've seen through the media, we've had some bicycle thefts. That's been a pretty hot topic. I'm here to tell you, we pulled the numbers and we are slightly higher than we were this time last year with the bicycle thefts. I think that one reason what drew attention this year is because we had several at one time. And a lot of the bike shops are out of bikes. So when the people go to replace their bikes, they don't have a bicycle they can get. And a lot of people depend on their bikes for transportation. So I think that kind of compiled with everything. We do a lot of bicycle education as far as what, no matter what kind of, if somebody wants your bike, unless they're going to do what they can, whether it's cutting locks or taking the wheel off, depends on how it's locked up. But we have seen, when I say a lot, we have seen a slight increase with the bicycle thefts. And I will be very honest with you, I purchased through investigations, we purchased some trackers and we put some bait bikes out. We put the trackers, and I warned all of my detectives because they talked me into buying these trackers. I'm like, don't let my tracker get stolen. So we put them on these bait bikes, and for a few days, and we didn't get any hits, nothing. And we had some nice bikes out there. So I think it's just hit and miss. I mean, I ran 6 detectives on 3 different days and put these bait bikes out all over in the downtown area. And we watched them and we tracked them, and we couldn't get anybody to steal our bikes. And then as soon as we end the detail, of course, we have a city council member that gets her bike stolen 2 days later. So from one of the areas that we had a bait bike. So we were already aware we were working on it, but it's just one of those things we can't predict. But so that's probably one of the hot topic items right now. I'm not saying that it's overwhelmingly running rampant, but it is at the forefront of people's minds.
And just another quick follow-up question. The improvements that we approved recently for the camera system, has that been fully installed now?
No, it has not. I do know that with IT, because we're in a unique situation, we do have IT housed in our building that handles all of our IT for the police department, but he doesn't work directly for us. He falls directly under line with Ken Haynes over at City Hall. And I know that they've been doing a lot of upgrades citywide. So I do know that's in the process, but I don't know exactly what level we are to that, because we're looking at a couple of upgrades. We're working on a couple of things right now. So I can find out for sure, but to my knowledge, they haven't been fully brought on.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Francis?
I just want to ask, for the bicycles, as a follow-up to the bicycles, there's this floating link for people to register their bikes. Do you know of a way, because it's not like they have an actual VIN number on the bikes, is there an easy way for people to find their registration on their bikes or what have you? Like, how does that work?
As far as what they do is they register the serial. We do 2 things. It depends on what bike shop what kind of bike and where you purchase a bike shop. If you buy it at the track shop, there on Beach Boulevard. If you buy it at the bike shop down near Beach's Beach Hut Cafe, a lot of those places, they're going to take those serial numbers and they're going to register them there. But what we tell everybody is when you get that bike, you can go on the site and you can register your serial number. The serial numbers pretty much always are on the crankshaft at the bottom of the bike. So if you turn the bike upside down, that's where your number will be. If you purchase the bike new, that documentation is going to be there. So you'll have that serial number. You can also register it with our police department. At that time, we take all of your bike information, and then we have a little decal that then is affixed to wherever you want to put it on the bike. Some people put it on the bottom. Somebody put it at the bottom of the A-frame. We obviously don't put it on a rim because you can take the rims off, but that's got a Jack's Beach number. So if we find a bike, first thing we're going to do is run the serial number and see, when does it come up stolen or missing, or involved in a crime through anybody that's entered into FCIC, NCIC. If that doesn't work, then we'll take that local number with the Jack's Beach sticker, run it, and then whatever information was put in the system when they registered it, we will have that, so we're able to track back and find out who's Okay, we have your bike. Where was it stolen from? How long has it been missing? We do occasionally have bikes that are recovered and we're able to get back to the owners. Unfortunately, nowadays, you go to the bike shop. I mean, show me a bike under $400. I mean, it's so popular, all the Mangos out here, the Mangos and the longboards, that's what everybody wants. And all of the wheels, the rims, everything's pretty much interchangeable on those bikes. And those bikes are pretty expensive. And so they're still usually right between a misdemeanor or a felony. But we had a case and we have a situation that we're kind of working. When and if we catch someone that has a bike that's maybe, okay, that's my bike, the serial number is my bike, but the rims are different or the handlebar is different, then that enhances that crime. We do have a situation that my detectives are working a possibility of something like that. It's not like a car chop shop, but it could be something similar to that. But I just think there's just so many bikes out there right now. That's kind of what we're seeing. And when I say the numbers are higher, don't quote me, but I want to say between January and August of last year compared to this year, we're up about 20, 24 bikes, 25 bikes for the same time frame. And that's
is there cross beach communications, or does each beach have their own? And I just asked that because I've had someone from Atlantic Beach reach out to find out the Jacksonville Beach one so they could put their number in the Jacksonville Beach one because they didn't think Atlantic Beach one had one. Do you
this is a Jacksonville Beach database, and as long as I've been here, as long as I've known we've had them, it's independent. It's not through the state. It's independently directly with our agency. But now
go ahead. Do you accept people who live in Atlantic Beach to go onto the Jax Beach one, or is it just that? And that's a weird question to ask, but I'm curious because they said they couldn't locate one for Atlantic Beach.
I mean, I can't see us turning away somebody if they're wanting to register their bike with us, especially if they work or if they're always up here in Jacksonville Beach. It's an unofficial. It's not like a state database. It is. It's ran actually by our CSOs and a couple of our CPAA, our volunteers. So when we get those spreadsheets, especially with the numbers, we just recently had one where we had the decal, so we were able to go back, put it in the database, and find out who it belonged to. Of course, by the time we made contact with them, the bike had been out of their hands for a couple of years. So who knows, they had sold it to somebody and then it went to somebody else. But at least it gives us a starting point.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other board members? Okay, Mr. Mann, new business.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. New business tonight, we have the adoption of the proposed fiscal year 21 budget via resolution 2020-03. This budget was also reviewed by the City Council at an August 10th budget workshop. The following provides background on the line items on the proposed budgets, including notable changes from last year. In the downtown district, personnel services costs related to the downtown have decreased slightly due to change primarily in employee classifications and in benefit selections. This is despite the fact that we have included the new redevelopment program manager's estimated salary in the budget. 60% would be paid by downtown, but there are other personnel service changes within the downtown district, which includes Cape, that have offset that as just a pure numerical increase for the new salary. So that's why personnel services are still slightly down, even with the 60% of that new position. Operating expenses are projected to remain consistent with last year's. Capital outlay has increased due to the capital additions for $500,000 for construction of the non-ADA walkovers. We just completed the 3 ADA ones, and $200,000 for the associated extension of stormwater outfalls at the general locations where the walkovers are. This year marks the first year where we're showing program capital improvements in the initial budget, as we described a little bit last at our training session, as opposed to incrementally throughout the year as capital projects are awarded. Cape is fully staffed with 11 personnel. Downtown Cape officers work with the area businesses, residents, and visitors, focusing on public safety and quality of life crimes. They're trained in crime prevention, code enforcement assistance, and they also provide responsible vendor training to the downtown businesses that serve alcoholic beverages. The decrease in personnel services for the downtown reflects, as I said, changes in employee benefit selections, and there could be officer changes within CAPE that it may be a slightly lower position. But anyway, there was a slight decrease in personal services for CAPE. Capital outlay for CAPE is $55,750 for the replacement of one service vehicle and one Segway. Those are in the capital improvements program for downtown Cape. In the South Beach district, unlike downtown, the personal services costs actually show the increase as a result of adding partial salary to the new redevelopment program position. As with the downtown district, there's no debt service extensions in the South Beach this year, nor are we presently funding any grant programs in the South End district. As with the downtown and Cape budgets, program capital projects are now included with the overall proposed South End budget. A total of $2.765 million in capital improvements is proposed, broken out as follows, and as was derived from the capital improvements plan. It's $1 million for the South Beach Parkway stormwater pond reconstruction. That's the pond between Longhorn Steaks and Ace Hardware, kind of in the parking lot of Ace Hardware, if you want to think about it generically or geographically. $1.6 million for phase 4 of the stormwater road improvements project, which we discussed a little bit at a prior meeting about the multi-purpose trail on the south side of Jacksonville Drive. That area is part of this phase 4 of that stormwater and road improvement project. And we have $150,000 for the design of the South Beach Basin stormwater outfall channel improvements. And that's the channel that runs along the north side of the Greensway behind Pier 1 and the Hampton Inn Hotel. That's how the South End District water eventually gets out to the Intercoastal Waterway. And just a reminder, the capital improvement budgeting policy. Historically, the CRA has amended its budget and allocated tax increment funds for specific projects at the start of the engineering and design process. And then we add construction costs at the stage when the engineer's estimate is reasonably firm, which is during the year as opposed to the beginning of the year. But due to statutory requirements, program capital project expenditures are now included in the initial budget for the fiscal year. That's why I related back to the fact that they're in the CIPs right now. For planning purposes, the city's 5-year capital improvements plan shows estimates for the projects expected to be funded using tax increment funds. This process helps ensure that funds are available as projects move forward. Tax increment revenue. The CRA can expect to receive tax increment revenue appropriations from Jacksonville and Jacksonville Beach this year, totaling approximately $7.1 million for the downtown and $2.5 million for South Beach. And based on that, staff recommends approval of resolution 2020-03. And I believe we have one.
Thanks, Bill.
Yes, sir.
Madam Clerk, if you're still there, I don't know how many speakers you have, but if you would call them and I will give them all, if they'll give their name and address for the record, and I'll give each one of them 3 minutes to address the board.
Yes, sir. First, we have Mr. Marsh. And Mr. Marsh, when you do get on, will you please state your name and address for the record?
All right, can everybody hear me okay? Okay. It is my Ken Marsh, 2011 Gale Avenue. I've reviewed the budget information. It's my hope that this budget is not passed tonight. Before you vote, I would ask you to seriously consider a few things. Does this budget satisfy how you want the 2021 TIF money to be spent? Is this truly your budget? As a citizen, if you came up with your list, is this how you want the money to be spent? Regarding the downtown, I've heard every one of you speak over the past year about the need to beautify our downtown, create an environment that residents will come downtown, and that we're trying to create an atmosphere that we have less bars, more restaurants for the residents. And do you feel this budget adequately addresses those concerns? And I'm also perplexed as to why we're voting on this now, prior to hearing any suggestions or recommendations from the Shepherd Group as to how we can begin to implement a vision plan that has essentially been on a slow simmer since 1987. Regarding our South Beach area, we've just recently developed a draft of the potential capital improvement project needs in the area. And as far as I know, you are about to vote on a budget where none of these projects are being considered. Quick story on one potential project. I was at Sunshine Park yesterday with the grandkids. We played on the playground, which clearly needs some TLC, which is code for a well-needed update. And then we went to the splash pad and sat on a few resin chairs under a blazing heat while the kids played in the water. All the parents in that area were discussing the fact there was no shade. And it was later mentioned that there's a plan to add a shade shield similar to the golf driving range. But I have not heard any of you mention and seen anything in the capital plan regarding this. We have the South Beach TIF money, so much so that we're talking about giving some back. How in the world can we allow this to happen when our residents are baking in the sun in the aptly named Sunshine Park? And yet, so I know that we can ask council for approval as future projects come up, but we all know that's an unnecessary layer in the process and a delay for getting things done. So in closing, I would ask that you not approve this budget as it does not align with your needs nor the needs of the citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Marsh. Madam Clerk, the next person, please.
Mr. McGraw is just visiting and listening to the meeting. Miss Wilson is the only other person, but I haven't received any correspondence that she wanted to speak. So I will try to see if I'll allow her to do it now. Miss Wilson, can you address the board, or did you want to address the board regarding any of the action item?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were calling on me. I didn't have anything to add at this time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Madam Clerk, thank you very much. Board members, who wants to be first? Mr. Hall.
Okay, yes, I was looking at the insurance benefit, and there has been a decrease in the cost of the policy. I'm just wondering, how does that affect the actual services that they are receiving from that insurance policy? Does that decrease some benefits that they get from that? What's going on with that? It's on the personal services and it's insurance benefits. There will be some.
Is that something you can address, Ashley?
Yes, I can address that. The insurance benefit is a decrease from the prior year, and it's due wholly to the selections that the individual employees are making. We've had no real change to our health insurance coverage, but it's a mix of maybe in the previous year we had more folks selecting family coverage, and in the current year we have more folks selecting single coverage.
Okay. Okay, one other question. Professional services, I know there's 66.7% variance in the 2020 budget to the 2021 budget. What constitutes these professional services that would cause that increase?
So the professional services represent attorney's fees, consulting fees. And I think we have programmed in the South End the consulting fees in 2021.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You know, it seems like I remember explicitly when I asked the question if some of the CRA funds would go for legal fees, and that was a no-no. So, but you said that may cover legal fees?
So I think Bill can speak to this.
Yeah, actually, professional services do include legal fees. The Shepherd Law Firm's consolidation of the downtown plan that we're going to speak to, that's a legal service. That is under professional services.
Okay, someone was asking me if did I anticipate some needed some legal services. Maybe that was just a, a gesture now. Okay, all right, I'm good. Thank you.
Who next? Jeff Jones. Mr. Jones. Unmute yourself.
There we go. Wrong button. Okay, we're having this program manager come on board this year, and I know a lot of us have our wish lists of stuff that we have been waiting for someone to come on board to kind of coordinate getting started on various things, a lot of small projects, let's say, not arising to the level of infrastructure, large infrastructure. I would like to see us maybe increase the maintenance and contract services budget to allow for funding of some of these areas. And I can go through a list of some of the ones that I've come up with just in the last couple of days that we've discussed in the past or have seen in the past. For example, I took a walk through downtown with Jim, and again, this goes to the beautification or renewal of a lot of our streetscape improvements. And I have a list such as, the Beach Boulevard median is in terrible shape, needs to be basically renovated. We have rights of way along various parking lots, the Ritz parking lot, the Pier parking lot, which is all overgrown or no grass or weeds. We have the second parking lot, the same thing. We even have a sprout palm tree growing in the middle of the sidewalk. Those things aren't necessarily cheap. And Jim had a suggestion that a lot of these things, well, we need to get a landscape architect in here to kind of coordinate how to make the streetscapes look decent instead of weeds and overgrown plantings. On the south end, we've got Jacksonville Drive where we did this Florida-friendly landscaping. Well, they land maintenance this year when they did the spring trimming of the bush grasses, they killed at least 100 of the plants, covering more than 50 yards. That's been that way all summer. Those things aren't cheap. That's going to take some money to replace. You've got the boardwalk, and for years, 10 years, walking up and down the boardwalk, you always got weeds growing out of the cracks. That's never been tackled, and I know those are hard to keep, but those are things where, if you get someone out there to field the comments from the public, from us, and to get these things done, they can get them done, but I think we got to anticipate having sufficient funds for those things to be tackled. I like Mr. Marsh's idea of the sunshade. The sunshade at the driving range is great. It was put up in a couple days. Why can't we do that at Sunshine Park? And we could, on a lot of these things, come up with estimates of what the cost is, get it in there, and then we've got the funds without having to go through the double-step process of approving it, bidding it, and then getting city council approval for it. So the list could go on. I just highlighted a few items there, but I would like to increase the maintenance budget and contract services to allow for some flexibility going forward in the year.
Jeff, if I can get you to read that list, if it's, just rattle them off, a couple of things you have, just so we have it on the record.
Okay. Actually, I guess I covered most of them there, or all of them. Oh, the one item I didn't miss, on Jacksonville Drive, again, we did the improvements of Jacksonville Drive, and on the right side, the north side, as you go west, there's subdivisions on the right side, and there's some right of way there that it looks like the city might mow it once every couple months. There's no ongoing, what you'd call landscape maintenance of that stretch of about 3 blocks. Again, these are major city thoroughfares, and they should look decent instead of overgrown with weeds and unkempt. So, but I don't have any more on that list right now.
Thanks, Jeff. Mr. Mann, question for you. I'll get to you, Francis. I apologize. I agree with what he said. Let's just go, for example, you've heard me say this before about gum on the sidewalks. If we want to go just because I know we're going to have someone in this position next year. And so there's going to be a lot of this stuff that we're not going to want to wait for Public Works to do it or for somebody else to do it. We want for that guy to hire somebody and have it done in 5 days. Now, does that come down? Is that under professional services? Is that under contract services? How was that listed in our budget?
Ashley can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's a bit of a blend. The contract services, in my mind, downtown, is that the tree trimming, Ashley? The contract
Yes.
services?
Yes, that's correct.
Whereas if you wanted to have somebody on board, and for instance, the pressure washing that we do $200,000 a year downtown. In fact, I've got Dennis Barron here in case there was any detailed questions about that portion of the maintenance. But if it's monies that need to be expended over and above the 200,000, and if you've got a question for Dennis about, is the pressure washer that we're doing, is it frequent enough? Is it doing in the areas that we're having doing it? Is it adequate? If you would like to propose to increase that budget, just get an amount and make an amendment and propose to approve it with an amendment with that added amount. That's downtown. I will tell you in the south end, over and above the maintenance that's already programmed in the south end district, there's $100,000 of discretionary money that the CRA will have available going forward next year that will be in the initially approved budget that will not have to go back to city council because it's already in the budget. And council was aware of that when I briefed them the 10th, whenever the 10th was, in a couple of weeks already. So down in the south end, we had that $100,000 of discretionary over and above what the South Beach Park maintenance plan is. And the downtown, the monies we have for maintenance and contract services are specifically for the pressure washing, which is 200,000, and I can't remember the tree trimming dollar amount. It's 150, I think. So those two items are there, but there is no discretionary money downtown above that. So if that's something you would like to amend now to add that, now would be the time to do that. That being said, because the budget, right, the proposed budget picks up on the projects that have been identified in the CIP, that does not mean going forward, even towards the end of this year, or the beginning of next year, projects can still be added. But you're right, if it's not in the budget right now, it would also have to be approved by the city council. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Francis.
Thank you, Art. So I am discouraged that this went to council before we had our words on it, and you guys know that, so that's a broken record moment because we could have had plenty of things we could have added to this prior to this meeting and prior to city council. I am a big advocate and agree with Jeff and even Ken Marsh about the fact that these are not giving us the cushions we've been saying for years that we need. On that matter, I want to confirm a couple things. So professional services are the attorney fees and counseling fees. Right now for the downtown area, it looks like we have $30,000 budgeted and total, and only 15 for the south end. Is that 45,000 really going to cover all of our services needed for the Gilmore or even Shepherd groups going into 2021? That's question one.
I have no finite reason to put another dollar amount on it. It's experiential from last year. We put $30,000 and that was at least a starting point for us.
Well, if I remember right, that didn't even get us more than just one meeting and a visit. So if we're going to have a solid year of help and we know the Gilmores are going to be available to us throughout the year, I kind of feel like since we were lowballed and we had to go back to city council and ask for more money, it might be something to consider increasing. So I want to discuss that. Contract services, if I understand it correctly, there's $126,000 for mostly trees. No, wait, that's not, is that the trees?
Yes,
For the
ma'am.
downtown area?
Yes,
And we have a $30,000 for contract services in the south end. What is that $30,000 in the south end for contract services for?
That's downtown.
It says south end, $30,000 under contract services.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at policing.
Page 4 of
that's-
4.
That was
numbers.
in anticipation of having a consultant do work on the South Beach Park, the park on the southwest corner of Jacksonville Drive and South Beach Parkway, the vacant
So
lot.
contract services are maintenance work, are people we can hire to do work? Is
Yes,
that what that is?
Yes, ma'am.
So I clearly think we need to increase our contract services for the downtown, specifically because that amount of money is not going to address that long laundry list of stuff we started in the beginning of the year, last year when Art went through and we sent you pictures and Jeff sent you pictures. Clearly that number isn't enough, and I think we probably should double that. The next, I see maintenance on, so page 104, line 46. That's the gum. You said 200,000, that was for gum. And I didn't hear what the other 140 was for. But when you look at the south end, there's that 150 you said we could use for maintenance, what have you. So I guess that's two questions. So where's the 150? Is that 150 increase just for the south end and there's no additional for the downtown? Is that what you just said a second ago?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Downtown
So-
is proposed to mirror last year's. I'm sorry.
So what follows, what falls under maintenance? Like
Okay,
what kind of things can fall under maintenance? Like we know that like we can hire contractors or what have you if we have the budget to do so, and that would be under contract services. But what would fall underneath maintenance?
Okay, it varies by district. The two districts were amended to specifically allow TIF monies for some level of maintenance. In the south end, it was worded to allow TIF monies to be used to maintain TIF funded improvements. That's a fairly broad allowance.
Okay.
Downtown, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, downtown, it's different. Downtown, it was for elevated levels of maintenance. It's for maintenance that we already know we're doing, but like for the palm trees downtown, trimming them once a year was not seemed adequate enough. So the public, I think Public Works lets it out. They handle trimming all the trees, all the public trees once, and the downtown CRA, the CRA pays for that additional cutting of all the downtown palms.
All right, so then maintenance for downtown, since there's no budget for it, do the signs and signage for the CRA district downtown is covered by our budget or by the council's budget?
It's the downtown signage, the signage master plan that we're going to implement. That was included in this year's budget. That's already budgeted. That's why it's not showed up as next year's budget. So that money will carry forward from this current year's budget. If we don't get the wayfinding signage plan let out until after October, we still have that money, correct, Ashley? It was based on the year-end distribution for the different Dix Heights plans. That's in this current budget.
But where? Because if we have 200 for trees and 150 for the south end, there is no extra money. So where's that sign
But
money?
that's not maintenance. That would be under capital projects.
Capital
And that was
project.
awarded. That was already awarded this year. And when we do next month's exercise of doing the year-end true-up, if it hadn't been done, we'll carry those monies forward as the program to implement that wayfinding. So that won't be maintenance. So that will be a capital improvement project.
All right. Sorry, guys. I have a few more. Just let me go through if you don't mind. South end on the maintenance as well, that 150, since we talked about what categorizes as maintenance, what have you, and we've already talked about multiple times how we cannot maintain or update or fix any of that equipment in that area because it was not originally TIFT CRA equipment. If we as a group chose to replace part of the playground equipment, that we wouldn't be able to use that under the maintenance budget, right? We would actually have to put some money in another category, maybe capital improvement or maybe purchasing. Where would, if we elected as a group to add more money to the budget so we could do some updates, replacing things so we could control that environment, where would that fall in the budget?
I believe that would be a capital improvement charge, wouldn't it, Ashley?
Yes, we would, and in fact, it is included in our 5-year capital improvement plan. In the year 2024, we have earmarked $500,000 to replace the Sunshine Park, what's within the fence line of the playground equipment.
So Ashley, if we wanted to put some money in there so that our new person, our program manager, could try to make it safe for the next 5 years, even though we're not technically allowed to make maintenance, where would we give them that buffer of money?
So in the South End District, in the line 46 that you referenced earlier, 140,000 is in the South End District for 2021. 40,000 has been identified from the Parks Department for their specific equipment needs. And there's an additional $100,000 that we set aside, understanding that the program administrator would want to form a maintenance program for both the parks and for the public works systems.
Okay. Okay.
But one thing to be mindful of, and Francis, you correctly pointed it out, of that entire South Beach Park complex, the only thing that the CRA did not pay for was that Sunshine Park. Because remember, it was kind of a grassroots effort. So if there's short-term maintenance going forward, it can't come out of CRA maintenance money. It needs to come out of the Parks and Maintenance, Parks Department's regular maintenance. Jason's on board now. Jason, is that how you see going forward doing the smaller scale maintenance until we actually replace the Sunshine Park improvements?
That's exactly right, Bill. Yes.
Okay. I'm almost done, Art. Thank you for being patient with me. I wasn't quite sure what other charges means on this. I looked through it and there is like an other charges. It's increased by $15,000 this year. I don't really know what that is. So if it's if you just look at it, it's basically line 49. I don't know what other charges, because if it increased by that much, I kind of would like to know what that's going towards.
Was that the cameras for the police department?
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I'm asking. It's for 2020 budget. And it's increased for both years, 2020 and 2021. It went from 5,000 to 20.
Can you direct me what page that is?
So it's on page 11. Just number 49 says other charges. And I know this is a combined a page, but it went from 5,000 to 20,000 between 19 and 20, and then it stays at 20,000 for 2021. What is the definition of other charges, I guess, is the real question.
So other charges would typically be like promotional items, if we have to do any specific advertising. Our budget officer is online. AJ, do you have the bot files open to see what we had programmed in 49?
Yeah, I do. In this instance, I believe the increase that Ms. Pavlovsky is talking about, it's that increase from about 5,000 in actuals in 2019. You see it's budgeted 20 grand in 2020 and 20 and 21. Typically, that's going to be in your downtown Cape activity, and it's just what we reserve for filing fees and court costs in the event that there are issues like that. And so we just historically we've budgeted 20,000 there because it's really hard to gauge how much you're going to spend on that particular expense in a given year. And so we don't want to catch ourselves kind of underfoot there.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so pretty much, I mean, I have other stuff, but that's pretty much the majority of it. I do strongly think that we need to increase some of these numbers. I'd like to know the process of doing that. We've mentioned in multiple CRA meetings possibility of adding extra security measures at South End, using some South End money for that. I don't see that in here. I'd like to have either capital improvement budget for that or find some way. And I think maybe Mike can help us decide how we would do it, if it's capital improvement versus just a maintenance thing for upkeep and redoing the budget or the security cameras and stuff down there, because there has been some mischief in that area that the police officers could probably like to have some extra eyes on. I don't see that in the budget, so I want to make sure we update that. And there's some, like I said, there's some other areas I'd like to increase as well, and I'd like to know the process to do that so that it can go back to City Council for approval as well. Thank you, Art.
First, one thing, if you do
There's no
have
rush, Francis. We got to.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Art, were you talking?
No, go ahead, Bill.
Okay. First off, if in terms of contract fees, if you want to propose that it would be doubled from 30 to 60, you could propose an amendment and approve it as amended. In terms of the South End enhanced police presence, or whatever you're talking about down there, that's a discussion we need to have with the police department. We also need to have an internal discussion, because at this point, I don't know if you've got consensus among the agency. So at this time, at this particular moment in budget adoption, without having it identified as an item, that's something that really ought to carry forward, and that may be a mid-year budget amendment.
So do you want me to put my amendments to this, propose my amendments and get votes for every single one of these? How does Art want to do this? Because I have like at least 5 proposed changes to this that I'd like to make. And I do believe we had consensus when we had a discussion about the South End stuff, when Gary brought all those things that we wanted to address, adding more to that South End budget for safety. I feel like if we go back and rewind, I think we don't know if we had an official vote though, but I think we had a consensus that that was what we wanted to do.
That was an item discussed.
Francis,
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Bill. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That item was one of the initial things that Gary talked about in the South End, but since then we haven't brought it back up. So I don't believe we've come to closure on it. And I know I've talked personally to the police chief about it, but the police chief has not spoken to the group to weigh in on professionally what his opinion about those type of enhancements are. So that's not really ripe yet.
So how do you want me to go, Art? Do you want me to propose all these, or do we have them written down? Like, what do you want to do?
Let me go through and listen to everybody on the board first, and then we'll come back and start throwing some dollar amounts out. So let's listen to Gary first, and then I think I have a few things.
Thank you.
Gary?
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Just to start, I guess in reference to the numbers that were outlined in Bill's memo, I wanted to double check and make sure. I'm assuming that we're getting this year, we're going to get the half-cent infrastructure surtax proceeds, as well as the water, sewer, utility operating revenues. Is that definitely coming this year? Because if you look at the numbers to get to the capital improvement number that gets spread through the spreadsheets, we have to assume that we get the 450,000 and the 129,000. So I'm assuming that that's definitely the case.
I'm looking for
a response.
I
I can't hear you, Bill.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
So I can respond to that. The capital improvement plan, the funding sources identified for the 2020 through the 2024 or 2021 through 2025 capital improvement plan, those 4 funding sources have been identified and earmarked. So where it says the water, sewer, or the infrastructure surtax, then those are the funds that are going to be contributing to that project.
Okay, so we will see those funds, and so that the capital improvements number is 755,750, excuse me, for the downtown district is a good number.
Yes, because that's the portion of the district's funds that would be allocated to the project, because we have some of these projects that are both within the district and out of the district. So the split has been identified in the capital improvement plan.
Okay. Ashley, you had mentioned a moment ago that we have a CIP improvement plan fiscal 21 through 25, and it included some South End work. The information that I have, what's available to me, I think we received this from you some time ago, does not include anything in the South District in reference to the improvements for the park and you know, any other items like that that were being talked about. What CIP plan are you referring to?
I apologize. It's the fiscal 21 to 25 capital improvement plan. I thought Bill had distributed it when we had our workshop last week, but if not, we can get that to you.
Yeah, I have not seen anything like that. The one that I have, I assume, is dated somewhere from the end of July, so it doesn't include anything like that. Moving on, Bill, in reference to your memo, you had a capital improvements budget of $2,765,000. I'm not sure exactly how you get to that number. I think maybe my calculator might be acting up on me, but if I add the 3 items that you have listed, I only get the $2,750,000. I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Bill.
I believe the additional 15,000 that is not referenced there is 15,000 for the park lighting replacement in the South Beach Park.
Lighting replacement?
Yeah.
Jason, is that something that's happening this year?
No, Bill, it's 2021 we're starting.
Okay, so that's what I thought. I just want to make sure that wasn't something we were already doing this year. That's why that's in the budget. It's a $15,000 for the lighting replacements and improvements within South Beach Park.
Okay. I guess I would echo the same thing that has been said by a couple of other council members, commissioners, that you know, I think there's a lot more that we need to look at from a maintenance standpoint that I don't think is covered in the budget. I agree with every item that's been mentioned to date, And I would add to it that, you know, we've got bollards, we've got paving issues in the downtown district that need to be resolved and cleaned up. Some of the bathrooms don't work. They need to be painted and renovated that are in the downtown district. And I think there are several other things along in the South District that also need some attention, as Jeff had mentioned in his review. You know, we really need to get our arms around what are the items that we need to be doing from a planning standpoint. We've got quite a few costs here that still need to be addressed, and based on the 21-25 year capital improvements budget in the South Beach District, we have in the vicinity of $15 million, $15.1 million in the next 5 years that need to be done. You add to it another $2 million in the way of expenditures and so forth on a yearly basis. So, you know, we end up having to fund quite a bit. And I'm wondering how we're able to give back $2 million or $2.5 million out of the tax increment funding back to the city of Jacksonville, because right now it's being proposed that we're only going to receive 2.5 million. So somehow we're quietly going to just shift this money back to the city of Jacksonville. And I don't think we've really looked at all of the funding for the South District and what's needed down there when you look over the next 5 years. And we've got $15 million based on the capital improvement plan. Over the next 5 years, we've got over $15 million worth of projects. So I don't think we've taken a good hard look at this, and I'm not sure that I feel comfortable that we've got our arms around how we're going to make all of this work, plus the additional items that we see coming down the road. The same thing is somewhat true for the downtown district. When you take a look at the downtown district and you look at the costs as well as the expenditures and then the funding that's going to be received, by the end of fiscal year 26, we're going to have somewhere around $17-18 million in excess funds. So does that mean that those dollars go back to the city of Jacksonville? I don't think we've been given a good, clear understanding of how all of this is going to happen. And I think that before the council can really vote on this, or I should say the agency can vote on this, we need to have a better understanding of what our overall game plan is.
Again, as I described earlier this evening, and as we described in our training session, this is not one stop only. There are no more changes to the budget. Items that come up incrementally through the year can be proposed to be amended in the budget. This factually are the projects in the CIP that were identified to go forward with fiscal year 21 for expenditure. That's what we explained last week or 2 weeks ago in the training. Going forward, we did identify an opportunity earlier in the process for the CRA to be involved in the discussions before the council, even in February. So February of next year, that's when we'll start looking at the input for the 22 budget. So you won't be caught in this seeming situation that you have, well, we weren't aware of this. I tried to state clearly what the budget was based on. I mean, this is an annual process. We didn't divert anything this year. The only thing we did different this year was to include known capital expenditures in the advance at the get-go, as opposed to incrementally as the projects got awarded.
Well, I guess I've made my comments at this time.
Thanks, Gary. I understand your frustration. Actually, I have a couple questions. some of the things that Gary just mentioned, you heard Jeff mention earlier about like brick pavers and gum on the sidewalks and some of those maintenance things that we always like to see get done, but it seems like we're waiting on Public Works or we're waiting on Parks and Rec. If we decided we're going to contract a private individual to handle that stuff, is that under contract services? Is that what you said?
So we would consider like pavers, paver cleaning, and concrete work to be part of the repairs and maintenance budget, and something like tree trimming would be part of contract services. It's kind of a fine distinction.
But let's just say somebody gets shot outside of one of our bars and we want it cleaned up the next day, and we don't want to wait on Public Works or maintenance. We want to hire somebody. How is that paid for? What budget does that come out of?
That would come out of the repairs and maintenance budget. If we want to go and do pressure washing.
Okay. Now, if we want to hire that person, kind of like what we did with the Gilmore Group, like could we go into St. Johns County and if there's somebody that's got a contract, a bidded contract with St. Johns, we can just tag onto that contract and hire that person the next day?
So going through our procurement policy, if there's already a competitive award in place, we are able to piggyback that. Or if it's less than $25,000, if we get 3 quotes for it, we can move forward.
Now, we can piggyback that through any state contract or through any other county contract. Is that correct?
Yes, the governmental entity contracts we may piggyback.
So we don't have to go through, Jack's Beach does not have to go through a bidding process if the city of Jacksonville already went through a bidding process and already has a contract in place.
Correct, but for utilizing somebody else's contract, we have to adhere to all the terms of their contract.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because God willing, we have this extra person on board, and when we see some of the things that we need to have happen, you know, my board's heard this analogy about Disney World all the time. There's no reason why our downtown can't look like Disney World. And so what I see happening next year is a lot more of that kind of getting it done tomorrow rather than getting it put on the list and getting it done in 6 months. And so I just want to make sure that we're looking at the right things with professional services, contract services, and maintenance. And the other question I have, since we have our own funding source, if we increase this budget significantly, we're not going to cause for the city council to have to raise the millage to handle this because, I mean, heck, we got $26 million in the fund balance, so we should be fine and not have to worry about them increasing taxes. Is that correct?
In concept, generally, yes, but one thing I want to point out to you, and I made that distinction before, the allowable expenditure of TIF funds for maintenance is different in the south end than downtown, and that's what, Dennis, I see you on the group, and I appreciate it. The list of miscellaneous concrete repairs downtown, tidying up, replacing pavers, cracked aprons and whatnot, that's coming out of Public Works and not CRA budget, correct? I believe.
I think it actually goes back to the CRA budget, but Public Works maintains the contracts, and then we maintain the list of what work needs to be done, and we provide that back to the contractors. The same thing that of everything that the chairman was talking about with gum and blood and all that stuff, we have a contract in place. Well, we will have at the next council meeting for our person that takes care of all of our graffiti, all of our seal coating, all of our paver cleaning. So there would be no need to find another contractor to be able to do that. We'll already have somebody at Jack's Beach to be able to do that. We just have to know what level of service the downtown CRA would like us to perform. If you want it clean more often, we can facilitate that. The money has to be put in the budget to be able to do that. $100,000 gets you approximately 50,000 square foot of pavers clean. So if you want it more often than that, we would have to talk about increasing that maintenance line budget to accommodate that.
My specific point was, though, if, for instance, if we've got an alley that has a failing apron right now for whatever purposes, anywhere else in the city, Public Works would do that maintenance for that alley apron, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Somebody would have to let us know that that's what we're doing, and we would get that put on a list, and we give that to our contractor. We did have a pretty good sized delay when our last paving contractor or concrete contractor basically went bankrupt and left us without a contract. So we had to start all over, and the list got relatively long while we were going through that process. But we do have somebody on board right now, and they currently have all the list of everything that we know about to be performed.
Okay, just for, so the entire group here, so in the downtown area, if the CRA did not pay for the improvement that requires the damage repair, then it needs to come out of just general revenue. For instance, the alley apron in front of Bricks, that's not something that the CRA built downtown. That's just the alley that had been there in front of Bricks. It's in need of repair. Art drove around with David McDonald, and it's certain just normal street repair stuff. It just happens to be downtown. Downtown does not allow for the maintenance of TIF funded improvements like the South End does. It's only for elevated. It's only if, well, you know what? As a city, we wouldn't pay for that median, but the CRA will downtown, because the city would not be doing it normally. So if it's something you're normally doing and it just happens to be in the CRA, it's still a line item budget, not necessarily going back to the CRA. And I don't want to bog the group down with this. We can have that discussion offline, but there is a distinction. And in the South End, it's a lot easier. South Beach Parkway was paid for by the CRA. In the South End, we're allowed to use TIF money to fund maintenance of TIF funded improvements. It's not specifically worded like that downtown. We're part of separate amendments. The elevated palm tree trimming, that's over and above. We don't do it. We do it once citywide. It's elevated by doing it the second time downtown. That falls into the elevated level of maintenance. So we just need to make that distinction as we go through each of these repair items to see if it's part of the city's normal repair budget or if the CRA can fund it. And that's what we'll do administratively. That's why it's good to have the discretionary extra maintenance money in the South End, because we've got rider latitude with what we maintain. Whereas downtown, we've only included the paver projects, which we know we're doing, and the additional tree trimming. So putting speculative additional monies downtown may not get the desired results you want, depending on what the maintenance is that you're looking for. That was my point, sorry.
Dennis, are you still online? I think we
Yes,
lost
I am.
him.
No, I'm still on.
Question for you. So I know the story about us losing the concrete person. Wouldn't it have been possible for us to pick up someone that does the concrete work in Jacksonville and hire that person to do the work here rather than allowing this list to build up and build up and build up?
If we had a continuous contract available for that style of work, and we went through purchasing department, and I don't believe there was anything really eligible for a continuing contract, but we just had to rebid our own.
Did we look in Duval and we also look at St. John's? I mean, because we can basically piggyback off of anybody's contract. So I'm looking at close municipalities that we could have piggybacked off of, and rather than letting this stuff just accumulate.
I would have to defer that to Ashley. That would be purchasing department. I don't know what conversations happened as to whether or not we asked any of those particular questions, or whether the general consensus was once we lost ours, we just knew we had to have another one.
Ashley?
So to follow up on what Dennis Barron said, you know, the terms of the contract with another agency might not have fit what we were looking for. So I can't speak to why we didn't piggyback somebody else, but I would say that that's commonly an issue, that someone else's contract doesn't meet our specific requirements.
So if we hire this guy come October 1st or whenever we find somebody, him or her, can they go basically do what I'm talking about, go find another municipal contract somewhere, bring that to you guys and say, this fits exactly what we want done. We want to get up and running next week. What will be the process for them to do something like that?
And so I kind of what we were talking about earlier, you know, if we have someone on board and they want to go like look for a landscape contractor that will trim the trees a particular way or shape the bushes a particular way, if there's an existing contract with another government agency and it meets the terms of what we're trying to accomplish, then we're able to piggyback that and move forward. But the contractor also has to be willing to extend those services to us. So they could proceed and go through our purchasing process like that.
Okay, back to the board. It looks like we're going to be increasing professional services, contract services, and maybe maintenance. Francis, you were raising your hand. I didn't mean to ignore you. I just had a few questions. You have the floor.
You actually asked the same exact question I was going to ask Art, so you're fine. But there was one more thing. When you guys were talking about capital improvements and whatnot, I did notice on page 1 of 4, the improvements, which is line 63, it basically is empty on all those pages. I know that you said this is the year we're supposed to be including those on here. Are you saying that it's the 700,000 that you guys are including that normally isn't included? I just wanted to verify that because I felt like I was missing something on that.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So for 2020, because we're talking, okay, so that's for 2021 budget, and that's the 700,000 you were talking about. Okay.
Correct.
Other than that, Art, you asked the exact question I was going to ask earlier.
Before I go back to the board, Mr. Gilmore, do you or your colleague Taylor have any comments on this budget?
No, sir, I do not.
Or any questions?
No, I do not. Good questions. Much of the discussion comes around from the training session that we had several weeks ago. So we're circling back around to some of the issues and the board is addressing them. So very positive.
Okay. Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I have a question for Jim. In our walk around, you made the suggestion on that landscape architect that I mentioned earlier. If we were to, you saw what we together saw in the downtown area. In your experience, if you have any with landscape architects, if we were to try to come up with a number for someone to come up with a plan for dealing with these areas, could you guesstimate a budget number for us?
Not do that because it comes back to a definition of standards and looking at your redevelopment plan to see what you want to accomplish. I've heard a lot of things that are in the plan that could be considered to be a part of that, but it does come back to a definition of what you want. And to go to what Chairman Graham said just a few minutes ago, if you want it to be a Disney World approach, then that's one standard that would have to be defined. And or if it's a matter of looking at maintenance and getting other business people involved, which we talked about as well, Jeff, then that's another standard, but it's a larger conversation than just throwing out a number because it depends on what you want to accomplish. Do you want to have design standards that people have to comply with as it comes around? And it's part of a larger conversation. Much of the work, I think, may have been done that way, but that's what I would say about that.
Jeff, you still have the floor.
Okay, well, I was just, I sense that we all want to make provision so that we have adequate funds, but trying to come up with a number for us here on a Zoom call is going to be a difficult process. We'd just be throwing numbers out.
I'm going to make an attempt at that. Actually,
Okay.
Question for you. I keep hearing that we can start with this and we can do a mid-year budget mod sometime next year. Doesn't that work both ways? Like say if I want to take professional services and bump that up to 100,000 and take contract services and double that to 250, and then halfway through the year, if we realize we have too much, can't we put it back? So rather than waiting and have add to our budget, can't we just put it back if we feel like we've pulled too much in?
Yes, we can do that. We can reduce the budget at mid-year if we feel like we have overestimated. But
So
conversely,
board, I'm thinking, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ashley, please.
well, conversely, we talk about what numbers do you assign to things and what standard of service do we want to have. So if you want to take the time to develop that, then we can come and make the budget adjustment at any time, not just at mid-year. In the past, we did all of our capital improvement plans at each CRA board meeting. So, once a month, you could be amending the budget to incorporate changes into your standards or projects that you want to move forward with. So you're not limited to the mid-year or the year end if you guys want to adjust the budget upward.
But every time if we came in once a month to adjust that budget, then that's got to go to city council to be approved. Is that correct?
Correct. It would be on to the city council either at the next council meeting or in their mid-year or year-end budget adjustment.
And one of the things that we've been hearing, and I've been hearing from my board members, is we're trying to be more autonomous away from the city council. So my point is, put it all in our budget now so we don't have to keep going back and getting another spoonful and another spoonful and another spoonful.
Yeah.
So I guess I throw this out to my board members. I throw out, and we're going to talk through this thing. So if I throw out a number of 100,000, and I'm on sheet 104, 100,000 for professional services and 250 for contract services. If you sit back and think about some of the things you guys are looking to get done, are those numbers reasonable? Should it be higher or lower? Gary? Gary?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just had to get the mute off. Ashley, help me understand something. I'm not sure I fully understand. We're concerned about giving money back and things like that. Right now, we've got, at the end of the 2020 amended budget, we've got some $25.4 million, roughly speaking, in the ending fund balance. Where is all that money? I mean, we're not giving it back. I mean, that's money that's sitting there available for the CRA to use in appropriate manners in moving projects forward, right?
Gary, for the good of the group, if you're looking at a document, can you tell people where you're looking so they can kind of follow along?
I'm looking at the combined redevelopment districts spreadsheet that was given to us as part of our agenda that, again, is under the column of 2020 amended budget. And you go to the ending fund balance and it shows $25.4 million. So we're starting this year, this new budget cycle with $25 million sitting between the two districts as available funding. That doesn't include the new funding that we're going to get, which is roughly $7 million for the downtown district. And we're saying only $2.5 million for the South Beach because we're going to reduce it to give some monies back to the city of Jacksonville. That's the way I'm understanding this, but if we've got these monies sitting there available to us, why can't we go ahead and use them on projects as we see fit as a agency to do the things that are necessary within the districts?
So if I could answer that, the $25 million, the combined ending fund balance, when your question is where is that? At the end of every fiscal year, we have to evaluate the fund balance in each of the district and assign those monies to specific projects. If you'll remember from our training, at the end of every year, you either have to assign the fund balance to a project, pay down debt, or return it to the original taxing authorities. So of that $25 million, at the end of this fiscal year, we'll come back before the agency and present the fund balance allocations to projects. And they're really the projects that are sitting in the 5-year CIP plan, and then the additional projects that were estimated as part of the downtown vision plan.
Ashley, if I take the numbers, I'm going to use the downtown district as an example. At the end of 2020, there's an end balance. I'm going to round it off. I'm going to say $8 million instead of the 8.4 that's shown in the spreadsheet. And of that 8 million, we're going to get additional funding over the next 5 years at roughly $7 million a year, which then equals roughly $43.4 million in funding for the downtown district over the next 5 years. If I subtract out the CIP projects, which are now projected to be roughly $15.6 million over that 5-year period, along with a guesstimate for what the expenses are going to be, which are roughly $2 million a year for the downtown district in the way of operating costs and so forth. At the end of the beginning of fiscal 26, my numbers indicate that we're going to have 17.8 or roughly $18 million available in the way of funding for the downtown district. It seems like we've got more than enough funding to do the things that are necessary, and we're going to be sitting at the end of, at the beginning of fiscal 26 with a big sum of money sitting in our pocket unless we do some more planning and good design work to get some of the things implemented to use those funds appropriately. Am I looking at this correctly?
I'll let Bill speak to that.
You are looking at it correctly, and you are correctly identifying the fact that when the infrastructure project starts to slow down, there will be monies available going forward for expenditures. So now is the point, first part of next year, first part of this next fiscal year, to identify projects downtown that we couldn't contemplate because we were on this major infrastructure improvement program. If it's a mixed use public-private partnership to do, that could take a big chunk of that. We have not identified that yet. That doesn't mean it won't be identified going forward. But you're right, right now, we don't necessarily have an identified expenditure to expend the $18 million. But the next part of this meeting tonight is to get the consolidated downtown plan to see what's left that we still have the ability to do because that's identified in the plan, but we don't yet have programmed. So you're right, but it's a little early to say, hey, at 26, we're going to have $18 million. What today are we going to do to solve that? It is correct to point it out and say we need to start looking like that. But until we hear what we hear from Mr. Shepard's group, we may have a lot of that available to us now that may say it may knock 2/3 of it out without even going out for other projects that may not have been identified. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you at all.
I appreciate what you're saying, Bill. I think what I'm trying to do is just make it clear to the rest of our commissioners exactly where we stand. The same thing with the South Beach. If you take the same numbers and you look at what's in the capital improvements program for the next 5 years and you project things out, I did it two ways. I did it one with just receiving $2.5 million in the way of funding. And if I do that, I end up with a balance at the beginning of fiscal 26 of about $5.6 million. If we maintain the $4.5 million that we've been getting for the South District at the beginning of fiscal 26, we're going to have $15.6 million in the way of funding. Again, assuming no additional capital improvement projects other than what's listed in the CIP program that I presently have in front of me. So, I don't know where the rest of the agency members stand, but I'm still not comfortable that I know of, particularly in the South District, what all of the capital improvement projects are that are necessary. We were supposed to be getting a breakdown of costs based on the program that the list that I put together, as well as a list that Public Works was putting together. I haven't seen anything. I don't know where we stand to be able to say that, we're in a position where we can give the city of Jacksonville and the other taxing agencies roughly $2 million back. Somebody needs to help me get my arms around this in order to be able to vote on a budget. Thank you.
Francis, you had your hand up? Nope.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Art.
I'm Chair. I thought Francis had something she was trying to add.
Oh.
No, the only thing I was thinking was an afterthought was to make sure that on Dennis's concrete list was that fake roundabout, to make sure that that roundabout got addressed, because that was one of those things we talked about, but it wasn't on Jeff's list just now. So that was the only thing it was like an afterthought to add to it. That's all.
I believe that's on the original list that Art and David McDonald and I came up with when we did our first drive-through, isn't it, Art? The roundabout at First Street? Yeah, it is.
All right, well, guys, I'm chairman, so I can't make a motion or amend this thing that's in front of us.
I will motion to amend. I'll not even wait for you to hold on for me. So can I motion to amend?
Yes, please.
Okay. I have 3, possibly 4, but the first one will be, I'm motioning to amend the budget for 2021 to have the professional services doubled in anticipation of us needing professional services throughout the year to get our new person on board, because they're going to need specialized training to go from the old school to the new school. So I would propose that professional services increase to $60,000.
Question.
Yes.
How would you like that split amongst the districts, madam?
Would you like me to tell you how? Okay, I can
Yes,
get that to you.
please, for the spreadsheet nerd over here.
Yes, I would prefer at least, let's just do 20, let's make it 40,000, 20,000 for each district, because I think the downtown is going to need most of it. And you said mid-year we could adjust if need be. So I would do 20,000 for each district. So I would like to amend it to be 20,000 professional services for downtown and 20,000 for the south end.
Thank you. I'll have that same question for your other amendments.
Okay. Art, do we have to vote on that one before we move forward?
Let's go ahead and put your amendment together, and if we need to amend your amendment, we can do that.
Can you clarify that? Can you clarify?
Okay, I'll slow down and I'll make the actual proposed amendments. So my first amendment is to increase professional services budget to 20,000 for the south end, as well as an additional 20,000 for the downtown districts for 2021 budget. Additionally, I'd like to amend contract services to an additional 100,000 in the downtown district, so we can cover more than just trees. And then maintenance. So put me on pause for a second. I want to clarify. Art, if I understood, they were saying that the downtown budget only included gum for pavers. It did not include any extra for downtown, but they increased it downtown. Okay. So then, is that what you understood? Was just the gum contract?
My understanding was the $200,000 for the pressure washer.
And then the additional 150. Okay. So then my third amendment is to amend the downtown maintenance budget, so we can do any kind of fencing and other maintenance stuff that we see deemed to make it pretty and more Disney World by at least 100,000 for the fiscal year 2021.
100,000 for downtown, and what about for south end?
The south end already has enough. They already increased it by 150 for this year coming up.
Okay, so if I understand your amendment correctly, professional services, you're going 20,000 downtown, 20,000 south end. For contract services, you're adding 100,000 downtown and nothing in the south end.
Correct.
And for maintenance, you're putting 100,000 downtown and nothing in the south end.
Correct.
Okay, that's a motion that's on the floor. Is there a second for that motion? Heck, I'll second that motion. Now for discussion. Any questions or comments about that motion?
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to make a comment when you deem fit.
Go ahead, AJ, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to clarify a comment made by Commissioner Pawlowski. We didn't increase the south end maintenance budget by 150,000. It was 150,000 for FY20, and then we're budgeting 140,000 for FY21.
Then I thank you, AJ. I'm going to amend my amendment. I did not see it that way, so thank you for pointing that out. I would like to do an extra 50,000 for the south end maintenance. And that's assuming that those shades and some of the other things that we seemed like the exercise equipment would fall under maintenance and not contract services.
I don't think the sunshade.
No, that's a good point. I'm sorry to interrupt on your motion, but adding a shade structure is not maintenance. That's a new improvement. So that would have to be dealt with it like that.
Right. It all, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, it really all goes back to the cost of what you're looking to do. So if a shade structure, let's say, is $30,000 to $50,000, and that's just me guessing, it constitute more of like a capital improvement in the area because you're adding an amenity that doesn't exist there, and because of the dollar amount, we're crossing a threshold also with purchasing policy there too. So it really just depends, unfortunately. This is kind of
All right.
hard part of the work here.
So,
What did the golf course cost?
well, that's
That-
at capital improvements though, they're
Yeah,
saying.
we could put
Yeah,
in a capital improvement, can we?
Well, we have
They
to discuss it.
they had it in their CIP for this year, and so that you're talking about the driving range, shade shelter.
Right.
I believe we had about, was it 80,000, Ashley, somewhere in that neighborhood? I don't know why that's sticking out to me right now.
Well, why don't we add 80,000 capital improvement for a shade structure?
Let me confirm in the FY20 CIP, and I'll get right back to y'all. Hold on one moment.
And Jeff, I thought Bill told us we had to like all vote on any capital improvements and be on the same page prior to, and we can't just add it, but I'm fine addressing that if need be. That was my understanding too.
While AJ's looking, Gary, did you have a question or comment?
Well, you started to address the question because I agree we didn't increase the budget in the South District. It maintained the same number. But I would ask us to increase that maybe by 100,000. And there are things down there like the fences around the basketball courts that need to be improved. Part of them are falling down. The individual exercise areas, there's quite a bit of rework that needs to be done under that equipment that in the park overall just doesn't have a good appearance. There's more in the way of landscaping that needs to be done. So I think increasing it by 100,000 would be appropriate.
Francis, do you consider that a friendly amendment?
I would, but I still feel like downtown's going to need more maintenance expenditures than the south end personally. I just think there's more space to cover and a lot more unfriendly eye moments through down areas. So, so I guess the amended amount is, so I guess that it's officially 20,000 professional service for both south and downtown, 100,000 for contract services in the downtown area, then 100,000 in both maintenance, then is what Gary's suggesting for downtown, for south and downtown.
That is correct.
And then we were discussing if we can, in this moment, include something for capital improvements before our group discussion. I don't know if we can or not.
So I have him.
AJ?
Yes, sir. I have him for the shade shelter was budgeted at $85,000 for the driving range. That's obviously a pretty large structure, but you could use it as a measure, if you will, kind of a gauge of what you might expect to spend depending on what it is the design looks like.
Bill, can we have a discussion about that now, or do we have to have that later on?
Sorry. You can have the discussion now. It's just how comfortable you're going to be with the accuracy of the appropriation. And if you're willing to back off, I agree with AJ. I don't think it needs to be the size at all of the one that's at the driving range. You said that was $80,000?
Yes, sir. We budgeted 85,000.
If you want to put $40,000 in there as a capital improvement, that would seem reasonable.
I see Ashley needs to say something.
So I probably need to look at this, and maybe Mr. Shepherd might be able to help me with this, but it's my understanding with the state statutes that when you have a project budget, if you set the project budget and you underestimate, you have to wait a budget cycle to amend the cost of that. And so with regard to the shade shelter, I might suggest that we get specific estimates and handle that by an appropriation or amendment throughout the year and focus on the maintenance program in the original budget.
I would agree with that then, and I would be fine with that. Jeff, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Well, then I rest with my proposed changes.
Gary, Sam, comments, concerns?
Well, I'm okay with the amendment proposals in that there are no real statutory conflicts there. So yes, I'm in agreement with it. I don't know if this is an official vote or just unreadiness, but that's my take on it.
Well, right now I'm just trying to get a feel the pulse of the board, I'd actually like to bump up the professional services a little bit for downtown, rather than being 20, bump it to 50. So that's 50 more.
So 50 more, not 20 more? Or are you saying
That's correct.
70 more?
No, 50 more, not 20 more.
Okay.
And I throw that out just to make sure you guys are okay with that or not.
I think that our new person's going to need all the help they can get, and I have no problem with that.
I agree.
Agreed.
I have no problem with that.
Okay, so the question comes down to either Bill or Ashley or AJ. Are we in the correct form to take a vote on amending this budget?
Yes, sir, because
Whichever one of you guys want to attack it.
yes, sir, because you're in the forum right now to approve the budget. And the only thing
All right, so we have,
I will have to, before the council does it, it may be at the floor of the council meeting, and Ashley, you may be on the chairman on this. I will just have to explain those amendments because they were not approved, they were not included with the budget review workshop. But because it will not relate to any type of millage impact, because we're using CRA TIF funds, I don't anticipate that being a long discussion. But I'll just have to inform them that because that's not, these are not the line items that were reviewed, but they're fairly simple, they're fairly straightforward, they're understandable. The goal of those amendments is very plain, very clear, so I don't anticipate a big problem with it.
And that'll be changed going forward, right? So starting in February, we will have had this discussion prior to city council seeing it.
Oh, yes, exactly. Compared with this year and past years going forward to next year, that's the point when we'd have it next year. We review the line items. It's like, and we'll only be halfway through the fiscal year, but we could prorate and see how performance-wise we're doing on those funds. And that may be a good way to say, yes, it is adequate. Hey, let's nip it back or let's prop it up a little bit. But yes, ma'am, you understand the process.
Gary?
Well, I just want to make sure that we as an agency understand that this budget means that we're giving back some $2 million to the taxing districts.
We're not giving back money, are we?
That, you know, we're giving that money back as when we approve this budget. And the question I have also is this going to be the same thing going forward every year, or is this a one-time thing that we're voting on?
In answer to the latter, you're just voting on this year's budget. Going forward, the CRA and the city council need to get on the same page as to whether or not we are going to look for a memorialization to the 50% TIF reduction, which the prior administration directed staff to do in the performance of last year's budget and this year's budget.
Well, but we're also the agency that makes, you know, has the decision power in reference to that, along with city council. And that may have been the appropriate decision back then, but again, we don't have all the facts to be able to make the decision, in my opinion.
Bill, you're muted when you said that.
Oh, sorry. No, I understand your position. It's partly a little bit of education we need to continue to do, but I understand where you're coming from. But be aware, the recipient, part of the recipient of that refunded money will be $700,000 back to the city of Jacksonville Beach this year, which I believe the city manager indicated would be money needed this year for the city. So it's, you know, it's.
That money, what? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Conversation.
If you remember the conversation the city manager had at our last meeting, he said that the council already has used the amount of money that's coming back from the city of Jacksonville from that $2 million in their budget. And so if we were to do something different, then they would have to currently amend their budget from what they're currently planning on moving forward. So it's not saying that we're gonna do this for now on, but for this year, he was asking us to hold still to this point. So I would encourage you to have, I don't know if you sat down and had a meeting with the city manager. I would sit down and talk to him, the city manager, specifically about this issue and go over that list that you had with him. And I'm sure if you call or if you have Bill set it up, you can have a meeting with the city manager.
Well, and actually, I don't think it was the last meeting, 2 meetings ago, because last one was training session, but the last active meeting we had before that, I told you that the city manager had tasked the CFO and myself from my side coming up to cost the project list, which I now have the cost for, Ashley to do the income side and to get together so he would understand it in advance of bringing it to the agency. We are very close to that point right now.
Yeah, and that's what we need, is to be able.
Yes, sir. No, I understand. It's been a goal. It's just, I know none of this stuff happens quick enough, but as quickly as we can.
All right, right now we have an amendment in front of us. We're not voting on the budget. We're voting on the amendment. Madam Clerk, if I can get you to call the roll for the amendment.
Gary Paytow,
Yes, I'm in favor of the amendment.
Samuel Hall,
Yes, I'm in favor of the amendment by Francis as corrected by Art Graham. I'm in favor, yes.
Jeffrey Jones,
Yes.
Francis Pawlowski,
Yes.
and Art Graham.
Yes. By your action, the Francis amendment has passed. Now we have the budget as amended before us. Questions, comments, motions on the amended budget that's currently before us? Now, one of the things we talked about was that sun shield in the south end. We can address that through the CIP process at our next meeting, or next 2 meetings, next 3 meetings, but we don't need to convolute that with the budget today. But let me go ahead and get a poll on if the group as a whole likes the idea of the sun shade in the south end and want to pursue that. Sam, are you for that or against that?
Now, this is a sunshade. Is this for the golf cover? I just want to be sure.
It's a sunshade in the south end over the water feature, over the, whatever they call the slip and slide area.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I'm in favor of that, sure.
Gary?
Yes, I'm in favor of it, and I would add to it that we ought to take a look at providing some seating for the parents when they're standing there watching their kids. There's no place to sit, and it'd be good to put a couple of benches there under that shaded area.
Francis?
I see no reason not to discuss it for sure. I'm for it.
Jeff?
I'm for it, but I think we also should consider it in the whole context of other improvements in the park, and whether there should be something else done at the same time, so that when we come up with a design, it's a permanent and fits in with what we want going forward.
I'm also for it. So, Bill, I'm just trying to give you some direction that we're all at one accord on this, moving forward with something down there, and we can get into further detail as we move forward. But I just want to, because you said before you want to make sure that it was all consensus.
Sure, and also that's partly why I had the Parks and Recreation Director tune in, so he's heard all this discussion about the South End improvements. So there you go, Jason. You got any comment on it at all?
No, all positive comments. I mean, you know, I do want to go back to the Sunshine Playground. That's putting the budget to 2024. And, you know, I would advocate, if you're looking to spend some money, that let's bring that forward, because that has been an issue. We did spend, you know, quite a bit of money a couple of years ago just to get us a few more years on that. And that's my only comment.
But that also is going to be in the CIP project, in the CIP project, correct, Ashley?
Yes, that's correct.
So that's also something that's not going to address or be attached to this budget we're looking at right now.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay.
That is not, it will not, physically, it will not be advanced to the FY21 budget. If going forward, the soonest it could be would be 2022, but that's 2 years earlier than it's programmed right now. That's the kind of input we would have next January, February, when you discuss the next year's budget.
Okay, so the budget as amended before us. Questions, comments, concerns? AJ?
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to make sure I have the correct understanding, so that way I can make sure I impute the correct numbers into the budget system for next year, because I can't imagine what that conversation would be like if I didn't. An additional $50,000 for professional services in the downtown district, an additional $20,000 in the South End district. Jumping to contractual services, that's an additional $100,000 in the downtown district. And then Jumping down to repairs and maintenance, I have an additional 100,000 in the downtown district and an additional 100,000 in the south end district for a total of 370,000 in additions.
That is correct.
Thank you.
That is correct. Any other comments, questions? Mr. Jones?
Yes, just to clarify, I heard a comment when the increase of 20,000 was mentioned for professional services in the south end, that it's going from 0 to 20. But if I'm looking at supplemental page 4 of 4, South End already has 25,000 budgeted. So it's going
Correct,
from
sir.
25 to 45.
Correct, sir.
Okay,
That's correct.
I misheard earlier.
Okay, I need a motion for the budget before us as amended.
I'll motion to, as amended, or to vote.
It's been moved and seconded by Mr. Jones. Madam Clerk, if I get you to call the roll?
Gary Paytow,
Yes.
Samuel Hall,
Yes.
Jeffrey Jones,
Yes.
Francis Pavlovsky,
Yes, and I look forward to next year's being done prior to City Council seeing it.
and Art Graham.
Yes. Are you asking you to approve the budget as amended? Okay. Let's take a break for about a minute so people can run and do the things they got to do, and let Mr. Shepherd be ready. AJ and Ashley, thank you very much for your help.
Thank you all very much.
So do I just start or am I waiting for something?
No, we're taking a minute, so people are going to go run, get a glass of water or what have you.
All right, maybe in the meantime, Chandra and I can make sure I got the screen sharing thing correctly.
I'm sorry about the delay, Cliff.
So,
Did I get it right?
yep, it's on there.
Okay, so whenever they come back, we'll be ready to roll.
Sounds good.
Cliff, I just want to let you know that we bumped professional services budget up a little bit just so we can afford you next year.
It breaks my heart. I'm gonna have to raise my rates. I was tempted to break in and say, "Go Francis, go," but I didn't.
Sorry you had to wait so long,
No
but
problem.
we need to get on top of that. I think I'm waiting for Jeff Jones to come back, and Sam Hall will be ready to roll.
All right.
There's Mr. Jones. There's Mr. Hall. And I'm guessing Bill Mann is there. He just doesn't want to see us anymore.
I don't blame
All right,
him.
Cliff, you can get started.
All right, well, let me start by saying this, just so you guys don't get distracted by my where my eyes are looking. I'm looking at you now because on this screen, I've got two screens in front of me, is the PowerPoint that I'm going to be presenting. And when I look this way, I'm looking at you. So as weird as that seems, I just want to make sure you understand, for me to see your faces, I have to look this way, but for me to see the PowerPoint, I have to look right at you. So that was intentional. But at any rate, if you can see the screen, what we're doing today is we're going to go through a sort of an overview of the work product we've provided up till now, and then open it to questions from you all about where you want to go from here. So this first slide just talks about the plan today and moving forward. And I was told that if I hit that button, it would go. So let's see. Wait, it's not going. Ah, there it goes. Okay. So we have this set up in our office as task 1 and task 2. So we are task 1 or completion of task 1, and that's our discussion. And that was to evaluate the original plan and its amendments and determine the contents of the current plan. And that's because, as you'll see, there were a lot of amendments to it over time, but none of them were incorporated into a single document. And so in order to make some sense out of what you were doing and what you had to work with, we were asked to put those things together and try to figure out what was still good, what was no good or overruled or obsolete, and what was still perhaps good, but no longer important to you. So those are the things we did. Phase 2, or the one I guess we'll be talking about next with you guys, is to coordinate with you and determine any desired updates in the plan. And I heard some of the discussion about that tonight during the budget. So I'm sure we'll talk some more about that. And then later on, depending on whether you decide it's necessary, once you realize what's still left in the plan to accomplish, we will prepare a new redevelopment plan to replace the existing documents. Now, before I even go to the next slide, let me explain to you about that, because preparing a new plan to replace existing documents is a two-part thing. One is actually deciding what the new plan would need to accomplish. And that's something that you will accomplish primarily with discussions amongst yourself, your planners, us to the extent it's necessary to tell you whether it's legal to do it or not. But we are not planners. So I wouldn't, for example, begin to tell you that you need wider sidewalks or brick paved streets or better street lighting. That's not what I do. What I would do is help you coordinate language that puts those projects in a broad way in your plan so that you can then go about accomplish them with the budget. The legal background evaluating the plan is so that you understand what the plan is supposed to do and kind of the strictures that surround it. So it may not expend TIF revenues, we explained those in the seminar last time, except pursuant to a valid redevelopment plan. And the sort of amalgamated version, which we provided to you as part of the work product, is the current plan as best we could put it together with the various amendments that are in and out currently. A redevelopment plan must discuss certain subjects such as land use and acquisition, zoning and planning changes, and maximum densities. The plan has to specifically identify any capital projects to be funded by the CRA, but may describe other programs more generally. One of the things that CRAs frequently get wrong is on that specifically identify thing, they get way too specific. We're not talking about, okay, we want resurfaced streets, and then we have to describe with great detail how thick the asphalt is and how much the base must be and how tall the curbs will be and all that. We just simply say we need to resurface the streets, and that's a capital project. And we need better street lighting. We don't have to describe the candle lights or whether it's, you know, a night sky compatible or dark sky compatible. None of that, but we do need to identify specifically what it is as a capital project we want to spend money on. General programs, however, may be more generally described. Things like facade grants, if you're familiar with those. Grants that you would offer to businesses in the CRA to make their exterior look prettier. As an example, we list here, if the plan sets out a rehabilitation program, it doesn't have to identify the properties that you will be rehabilitating, just that you have a program, and it's appropriate to explain what the goal of the program is and that you will spend money to do it. Interpreting a plan. This is something that gets kind of washed over in many presentations, but it's important to understand that plans are documents, so that just like when you're reading a case or a statute or an ordinance, interpretation can be required. And so when you start to interpret what does it mean, you do that with the same rules of construction, that's what the lawyers call them, that you would do with any other legal document. So what was our approach to the downtown redevelopment plan? Well, the original plan was passed in 1987. It's been amended 8 times, and each time it was amended, the new amendment left non-conflicting portions of the existing plan intact. And this means that the existing plan is a combination of at least 9 documents, with each newer document potentially superseding portions of the previous documents. And to address this, we went through each of the documents line by line, section by section, to determine if any later amendments modified or superseded the language of the then existing plan. Now, let me stop here and say, if you've seen our work product, you know that it's color coded. And so if you know me, and some of you will, and some of you will have no clue, you know that's not something I could have done because I'm colorblind. I just was told that it's color coded. So I'm repeating back to you information provided to me by my diligent associate, Jake, who's on this call. So when we get to the color stuff, he will explain the colors and what they mean and why they are the way they are. But that's why it was done, so people who are not like me can relatively easily visually understand what they're looking at. When 2 provisions governed the same subject but could still coexist, we did not view those provisions to be in conflict. You might say that some of them need to be eliminated or not, but we're not the decision makers in that regard. That's what your job is. So for example, if the original plan proposed a residential development on a block, and the vision plan proposed a commercial development on a corridor that included that block, we would interpret that as allowing either residential or commercial on that block, with a preference given to the vision plan. And the preference is given to the vision plan because it is the most recent expression of the intent of your agency. So the summary of conclusions regarding the current plan, I'm going to let Jake, as y'all can see, and I'm not doing so well at, this is the color stuff. So Jake, I'm going to let you explain what your work product and what our work product tells these people visually. Go ahead.
So as you can see from the text, the vision plan should be the primary guide because it's the most recent expression of the CRA's intent. And the map, which I've included on the right there, is actually the land use plan from the original redevelopment plan passed in 1987, which has never been amended. But the color coding there shows all the different ways that later amendments amended that land use plan. So, for example, unfortunately, hopefully nobody else is colorblind, but the green portions, which are actually all 4 of them are stripes down the redevelopment area, all in the downtown core area, mean that somewhere in the vision plan, it describes the 4 corridors, 4 specific corridors, and it says certain things about each of those corridors. So basically what you do here is if you're looking, let's say you're looking at, I'll pull this up, and a larger version of this map was included as the second to last page on the simulated plan in your materials. Let's say you're looking at doing a project along First Avenue North in your redevelopment area. So you'd look to the map and you'd see that corridor governs that corridor of First Avenue North is governed by a vision plan corridor, meaning that part of the vision plan describing corridors has talked about what you can do on First Avenue North. It's got 2 specific proposals in the vision plan, and also the end portion down by, I believe that was the bandshell area, was amended in the first 2 amendments to the redevelopment plan. So whatever you want to do, if the vision plan doesn't talk about it, or if the vision plan talks about it, then it's going to be authorized. And that's going to take precedence over anything that came before it. But if it doesn't talk about it, and it doesn't exclude it, then you can do it, if the vision plan talks about it and it's not something that would be authorized by the vision plan, then the vision plan would prevail. You just have to go through the analysis and see whether or not the vision plan would authorize that land use within that corridor. And if it would, then you're good. Or if the original plan would authorize that land use in that corridor, you see whether the vision plan said otherwise. And if it didn't say that, then you can do that. But somewhere in those amendments, you have to find some kind of authorization. And the land use map that I provided here will tell you which plan document you have to look at, whether it's the vision plan, whether it's just the original plan, or whether it's also the one of those first two amendments. Or I'm sorry, that's amendments 1 and 3.
All right, so what we did after we looked at what was in and what was out and tried to pull together not only a visual, but a document that included the stuff that is still in, at least insofar as it's not been conflicted or made obsolete, is we put together what we've called the simulated redevelopment plan. And so that's the document that took the original documents, which were 80 some odd pages, and I think got them down to 50 something, because we took out of there the stuff that had been overruled and was no longer in force and effect. And so that simulated plan, to the best we could do it and mesh it together, and of course, let me be clear, we had to add some language, but the language was designed to make it flow, not to change the intent or the meaning. That's the closest you have to a document that is a complete iteration of what is current for your CRA. While the majority of the projects have been completed, the CRA still has many general powers that are available, such as undertaking rehabilitation programs. So that's the document that if you're trying to figure out, okay, what's still okay, that's the one you would look at. What's our legal recommendation? Well, we recommend, obviously based on whether or not you believe, and based on your conversation tonight, I think you do, believe you need a new comprehensive redevelopment plan that re-examines what it is your goals are and how those goals will impact the elimination of blight in the downtown CRA. Now, it's important to understand that, you know, the whole idea of blight didn't come out of the air. Some of you may have, and some of you may not have. I know Bill has seen both things, but you are certainly aware that there was a study and finding of blight going back to 1987 that kicked off the whole downtown CRA. And the things that the community at that time found qualified under the statute for blight were irregular lot size, need for diversity in ownership, and essentially, I'm putting a summary version, but dilapidated building which were unsafe and unsecure. And so when you're looking at a plan, there's two ways to look at it. And Jake and I had this discussion actually as sort of an academic debate before getting on this meeting today. One, which is the way I tend to look at it, is if you're not accomplishing something that addresses the specific reasons that you were given a CRA, and I say given because you were delegated the right to have a CRA by the county, then your plan should be examined, because the whole reason you have a CRA is to address those things. Another view, and the one that's shared mostly by Jake, but I actually agree with him when we talked it through, I think that both approaches are valid, and actually probably a blended approach is the best, is if you can eliminate blight through whatever means, as long as the expenditures are authorized and in your budget and in your plan, then you are by definition addressing the underlying conditions that supported your study and finding of blight. So I think as an initial check, when you're looking at what you want to put in your plan, go back to your original findings and say, okay, we have irregular lot size. How will this address that? Or we need more diversity of our ownership. How will this address that? But I don't think the inquiry has to stop there. And I think that would be Jake's point. And that is that if on the bigger picture, you're doing an authorized activity that will help eliminate blight, then you are accomplishing the goals of having a CRA. So that's important. You want to, if you set up a new plan, you will be able to avoid competing objectives that you'll see on a project by project basis. If you have the entire plan in a single document, it's not just easier to stand, but it's also easier to defend if we ever have a challenge. And that's important because as I said, we didn't put any language in there to change the meaning or to change what the intent was, but it was like stitching together a pair of tattered pants, and those seams are going to be obvious to anybody who's reading it. So what I would suggest to you is another reason to do your own plan is that all the language, whatever it says, will be your own. Since amendments can extend the plan for up to 30 years, you could extend your downtown CRA up to a final expiration date. This is the max allowable of 2047. I think you're probably a couple of years short of that right now in terms of what your documents provide. A new plan also allows the CRA to discuss specific proposals as it did with the vision plan, and it strengthens the authority to spend TIF revenues on whatever the program may be. In doing so, you would need to take care to comply with the interlocal agreements that you might have with the county. And I know you have at least one, because when Steve Lindorf was here, we talked about it at great length, and I marveled at what he was able to accomplish through interlocals. So the next step is where we are, evaluate the original plan and amendments to determine how it currently limits your CRA based on the things that you all discussed tonight that you'd like to accomplish. To coordinate us and you and your experts and consultants determine any updates to the plan priorities. What's your most important thing to try to accomplish? What's your least, and kind of reorganize yourself. And then if you all agree it's the right thing to do, prepare a new redevelopment plan to replace existing documents. It is my assumption, although I could be wrong, that Mr. Gilmore's firm would be a significant part of that part of the process. I'm certain without any checking that he has more planning background than I do. And I'll bet that I'm pretty far along in the law, comparatively speaking. So I would see it as a team effort. But whether it's Mr. Gilmore's firm or some other planning firm, that is how I would envision it going forward, if that is your decision. So that is the end of our presentation. At this point, phase 2 of the task starts, assuming that you're okay with what we did in phase 1. If you send us back to the drawing board, then certainly we'll be happy to do whatever we need to. It should probably begin with a discussion of what kind of things you'd like to see in the plan. If it's too early that you don't have specific projects, maybe that's a future workshop. I don't know. That's between you and Mr. Mann and your consultants. What do you want to do right now that's not in the plan? Whatever you decide, whether it's an amendment to what's existing or basically a redo, a substitution, we're prepared to help you go through that process.
Thanks,
And
Cliff.
I'm open to
Tandra,
questions.
Tandra, can I get you to put everybody on the screen again?
Yes, sir.
Do I need to stop the share? Because I can do that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Cliff, I got a quick question for you. You're talking about we were put together to take care of the blight. We can no longer use condemnation anymore for blight. Is that correct? We have to find a willing seller?
That is correct. Willing seller, you're the willing buyer, and that is true as a result of the Kelo case, which some of you will know by name, but if you don't, it's the case I believe was out of Connecticut. And basically, people got all up in arms because an agency like our CRAs was by force taking property from a private property owner to provide to a developer who was going to do a shiny project that that agency liked better than what was existing. And, you know, a surface of it, frankly, as long as the party got paid fair value for whatever they were being forced to sell, I personally, my own personal view, wouldn't cause a problem. But many, and neither did the U.S. Supreme Court or others. But politically, it was very much a football with certain folks. And as a result, I'm not sure that there's any state in the country that still allows condemnation for redevelopment purposes.
Now, can we set a minimum standard in the CRA area? Like if, I don't know if there's like a beautification code or if there's kind of like someone does in the homeowners association, or do you have to, is everything just limited to whatever the city council has as a standard for the entire city?
Well, okay, so you actually have touched on an issue that's probably going to get put on front and center sooner or later. you as the agency are in a unique position. I won't go so far as to call your agency a unicorn, but it's pretty close, because you are one of only a handful in the state that actually have a board that is not the elected officials. And it's important for you to understand that, because pretty much everything you do at some level has to be approved by those folks, whether it's your budget and the projects you want to spend money on, or implementation of a set of design criteria, which is what I think you're talking about. One of the first CRAs I was ever involved in is the city, one of the cities I'm still the city attorney for, and that's Maitland. And we have a set of design criterion for things like how we handle parking and whether shared parking is permitted in the CRA, because we have obviously a shortage of space in our downtown there, and other things of that nature. We allow in that district churches to be much, much, much closer to restaurants and bars than we would anywhere else in the city, and those kinds of things. And those kinds of criteria are engrafted into the zoning code that it specifically applies to the CRA. So the answer is yes, you can do it, but you can't do it alone. You would have to get the approval, because the only body that can actually draft and craft legislation that would be binding there would be the city council.
Board members, questions for Cliff or Jake? Gary, you have the floor.
First of all, thank you. I started reading those documents, and I'll tell you, I was lost at the beginning. But when I started going through them further, I fully understood what you were trying to accomplish, and trying to meld all of that into one document had to be a monumental task. So thank you, both of you, for doing that. It definitely provided some clarity for me. I would just add your comment in reference to the CRA's existence for both districts. We're in existence until 2047, based on the approval that was done by City Council, I think in the last 6 months, something along those lines. There was also somewhere in the documents, and I don't know if it was in the original documents or the ultimate document that you put together, about a review, that the CRA would be the review agency for all developments within the district, that there would be something set up so that any project built would have to come through the CRA for basic design approvals and things to that extent. Is that something that you would recommend the CRA doing?
Well, the answer to your question is, I would recommend it because it is my assumption, and it is clearly a something that's based on no personal experience with either your city council or much personal experience with you guys as a board. And obviously the pandemic makes it harder to get to know you individually. But I would suggest it because it is my assumption that, like in most of the governments that we represent, and many of which are cities, if it comes through, whether it's P&Z or in this case, the CRA board with a recommendation, and again, you're unique because you're not independent, but you're separate from the elected officials, then it's going to have a much higher chance of being approved by the folks who actually get to make the final call, in this case, your city council. So that is the reason why I'll call it the heavy lifting. It should be done, and I think would be a good idea to be done by you, so that when it goes to the council, it's with, we've reviewed it for our standards. Our standards are designed to, which by the way, they'd have had to approve anyway. So you've done that heavy lifting for them. It meets our standards. We think it's a good project because this is why we want to spend the money on it. This is why we want to put it in the budget and so forth, as opposed to just throw it up there and see what they do with it. I think that you'll find more success if you all have weighed into it, vetted it, and given it serious consideration, rather than just putting a, here's our wish list, what will you go for? So that would be my take. But again, I don't know your council, and I don't know all of you that well. I'm just going for the experience of having represented a ton of governments for a long time.
Well, I would just say that I think I would agree with your comments, because I think we've lost some opportunities to direct some of the new projects that are being done in the downtown district, and they don't follow the vision that had originally been created back in 2007. As an example, Spring Hill Suites. along, right along the edge of the entrance to the pier. What a great opportunity for some retail development along that edge on the south side. And unfortunately, it's going to be basically looking into a parking lot. And had we done what was in the vision plan, which does call for retail, I think we all could have been winners in this. The other thing that maybe you've addressed this a little bit with your earlier comments, but in reading the documents, and it was identified as something that was still appropriate, there was a series of first steps that were identified. And the first steps talked about, detailed management plan, financing, development, and things to that extent. I didn't see that in the final document that you created. I would think that these first steps would be helpful for the CRA board to have, so that it at least starts to guide us a little bit on how we come out of the chute and how we need to get things moving in the downtown district.
Well, I won't disagree with you. I will tell you that there are as many approaches almost as there are CRA professionals. And by that, I mean executive directors like Mr. Mann. And everybody has their own take on the way this goes. But I've seen a lot of CRA development, and I've advised a lot of CRAs. I think you all know that I'm the general counsel for the FRA, which is a statewide organization for CRA. So I've had many different kinds of questions, and I've seen many different approaches. As I told you during our training session, the most effective approach I saw was one in which, and I'm not kidding, every step that I'm telling you is accurate as to how it occurred and why it works first. And much like I see this board tonight, and I was very encouraged by it, the board members listen to one another. They don't talk over one another. They don't fight with one another. They listen respectfully, and they take in the opinions of the other members. And if they can't reach an agreement, they try to carve out a compromise. And here's something that, again, I need to emphasize. I used Winter Garden as an example. I highly commend it to you. You can just go on and look at the pictures. But every single meeting that accomplished what you'll see when you go there was done in 30 minutes or less. Does that mean they didn't spend a lot of time studying? No, they did their homework beforehand. And part of the problem with CRAs in getting things accomplished is inaction. And it's inaction because of fear of making decisions. And that absolutely results in a stalled situation. And the reason that's important from a development standpoint that applies whether you're a CRA or just a city trying to figure out how to spur new development is the market is ever shifting. If it takes you 2 years to decide on what the right project is, the market's already changed. I'll give you a perfect example, and it's the city I first mentioned, Maitland. When I got to Maitland, before it actually had a CRA, it had a downtown redevelopment plan, which involved taking one of the main arteries and turning it into a street with a roundabout in the middle. The roundabout was going to be the center of City Hall, and it looked something out of a design book, was gorgeous. But by the time they got to the point of saying it's what we want, the market was gone for that. And so it means doing your homework, not only on what you want, which a lot of people can just tell you what they individually want, but also on what will work, and then try to figure out how to attract that to your CRA.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Bill, did you have something you want to add?
No, I just, the point about the CRA review of development projects, just wanted to remind you, because we don't have that many of them. And Cliff, I don't know if you were aware of it or not. It was our anti-big box ordinance that we passed as a city when Home Depot and Lowe's were shopping everybody's.
Right.
We put in a anti-big box amendment that anything over 50,000 square feet had to be only approved via PUD rezoning. Well, we took it one step further in the downtown district. It also, it was, instead of calling it a PUD, we call it a redevelopment district. So we don't require vetting by the CRA of every project, but certainly any project that would exceed 50,000 square feet can only be approved by redevelopment agency, recommendation on consistency with the downtown plan, then by the planning commission, and still, as you harp, ultimately by the city council. So we do have that to a point, but it's not for every redevelopment project.
And again, go ahead. I'm sorry, Gary.
Bill, I guess I would disagree with you a little bit on that, because when I watched the activities related to these Spring Hill Suites. The only thing that the CRA was allowed to do was to vote whether or not the zoning was appropriate. It was never allowed to talk and discuss options as it related to the edges and the development of that project. And that's really what I'm thinking would be appropriate and helpful for the CRA to be involved in.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I don't believe the CRA was prevented from commenting on anything about that plan. That's,
Well, you and I talked about it a little bit, and you know, you indicated to me that the only authority the CRA has was related to zoning, not to any design aspects.
it was whether or not the project is consistent with the downtown redevelopment plan, which I believe, and I understand your point, but and I don't want to argue it here. That's a separate conversation, but the CRA is charged with making sure that redevelopment projects are consistent with the downtown redevelopment plan. That's why these projects go to the CRA.
One thing I'd simply add, and I would want to do it just really briefly because this is your floor, not mine, but I would suggest to you that if I've ever seen a situation which calls out, I'm not generally a big fan of workshops, but in this case, because of the fact that so much of the buck stops at council, I would suggest to you that a workshop that puts you or attempts to put you and the council on the same page and understanding the power dynamic there might not be a bad plan as one of your early steps in this phase 2. Again, it does you no good to spend hours and hours gnashing teeth and crunching numbers to figure out a plan that the majority of your council will not support. I don't know what that will do. I'm not even sure whether they're open to the idea. Perhaps Bill will know. I know Mike is on the meeting, and so maybe he wants to chime in. But most of the time, I poo-poo workshops because they're just a waste of time and no decisions get to be made. But in this case, particularly where you are in this process, it might be something to consider.
Well, Cliff, I took your advice and I went to Winter Gardens 2 weeks ago, and it was absolutely fantastic.
Good. I hope you had a beer at Crooked
Sam
Ken.
Hall. I did. Sam Hall?
Yes, Cliff, I just want to be sure on what you're recommending. I know that you're talking about a vision plan, and that will usually supersede the original plan. Now, given I know since the original plan, there are some things that are not applicable to where we are and probably not relevant to where we are right now. And then you said it took one group about 30 minutes. It seems like it's a bit more magnanimous than that. I mean,
Well, let me explain what I mean. You're in a different place already because they had a plan, and what I'm talking about is a decision-making process. So done correctly, if you and the council can get on the same page regarding what the future vision for the downtown CRA should be, so that you put together a cohesive plan about what kind of developments you'd like to see, what kind of things you'd like to incentivize, and such as that. Once that's gone through the process of your vetting it and it being adopted and approved at the council level, so it's now your plan, that's when I'm talking about the meetings that are 30 minutes long. When I got there, there was already a plan. And what happened then was, okay, here's a development. Yes, no, what do you like? What do you don't like? How would you like to see the developer tweak it? And off we go. That's off to the races. We're not there yet because we don't have a workable plan yet that is up to speed with where you want to be. What I'm suggesting to you, though, is once you are there, do not let the grass grow under your feet because the market will change and the market will drive your success 100%. No project, except those that fail, get developed in spite of the market. All projects get developed because of the market, and you need to know what that market is.
Sam, you still have the floor.
I'm good. Thank you very much for that explanation.
Yes, sir.
Any other board members? Questions, comments? All right, Cliff, where do we go from here?
You can tell me to stay or get lost, but either way, were I there to guide you, I would tell you this is the time to discuss whether or not you want to do a new plan, meaning one where you essentially say, let's do a complete rewrite from A to Z and and talk about how you want to get there. And whether that involves workshopping with the council or workshopping with Mr. Gilmore. Again, we'll be happy to be at anything you want us to do, but we're the lawyer parts. So once y'all figure out what you want, we just do the drafting. I'm not someone who's going to tell you what the market is doing right now, because I have no idea what it's doing in Jack's Beach. I don't know what would be successful or not. I don't know even if it would be successful what you'd want. I'll give you an example. There was a time when every project, it seemed like, was coming to one of my cities was mini storage. They didn't want mini storage, but it's very popular. It would also be very successful. It's just not something they wanted. You don't have to want what's successful, but what you want will not come unless it's going to be successful, or at least the people who are bringing it think it will be. And so that's the disconnect. I am not at all telling you approve every project that will be successful. What I'm telling you is know what those projects are. And when the ones that come that you don't want, you need to understand there's a reason, particularly if you've heard the second and third and fourth application for daycare, for example, which I've heard probably 4 of in the last 6 months. The market is telling you they want daycare. Do you want daycare? That I don't know. But that's what you have to listen to. And so once you have a sense of what you want for your plan, whether you want a redone plan or you just want to amend parts of it, then we get to drafting.
I got a quick question for you. Are there parts of the plan that we lose if we created a whole new plan? I mean, do we have things that are in our current plan that are grandfathered in? You know, law may have changed, but
no.
If we go to a new plan, we lose it?
I will let Jake address this after me, but my understanding is the answer is no, because there's nothing in your current plan that, as it currently exists, that wasn't overruled by some later amendment, that wouldn't have been able to been done now. In fact, what's happened, not only have the factors for blight gotten broader, but the ways in which you can spend the money have gotten more well-defined, so I can give you a better idea. As I said in the last session, bricks and mortar projects are preferred, but they're not the only way to spend money. But they are a very important element of how to spend money in a CRA. And so, and any of those parts that you like, you keep. You just put them in as, give them their own section number. Maybe you don't even change the language if you like them that much, but you just bring them over to the amended and restated, or however you want to title it, plan for your downtown CRA.
And I wasn't going to add anything other than no, everything that was empowered by your original plan is still there for you. There's nothing that was grandfathered in.
Thanks. Francis?
So what is the time framing? So what we have from you, we could move forward with making sure we followed the little like color chart, and we could be able to discuss, and we would be just fine moving forward what we have.
If what you've got now accomplishes what you need, then you don't need to talk to us again unless you have a problem.
I mean, we could, but if we chose to move forward and have, I agree with you. I do think in the situation we're in, if we were going to make a new plan, we would need to get on the same page with the current council. I would agree with that 100%. What is the time framing that we're looking at? Like, I don't want to be in a position where we finally have something that we can create our own kind of plan, our project planning, and then be stalled because we now have to do a new plan. Like, what would be the time frame you to create one and say have said meeting with the other group?
Well, allow me a little bit of an expanded answer than just a short one, which is, first, it would depend on how many people do you want at the table. And here's what I mean by that. I don't mean now just the council workshops. That would be a good place to start, but they should be facilitated. If you go down that road, meaning your consultant should be there, the planning staff of the city, to the extent they have knowledge and input regarding planning issues that are important to you, and can help your consultant, for example, decide what is currently okay in the zoning standpoint and comp plan standpoint and so forth. Because anything you do has to be consistent with the comp plan, or the comp plan has to be amended. Same with zoning. Number one. Number two is, are you bringing another consultant? Do you need another consultant? Someone who would tell you not what a project might look like, but what the market has done. And again, I unfortunately do not have the benefit of knowing all of Mr. Gilmore's firm's credentials. And they may have the marketing person there that can tell you, here's what's going on right now, and here's what will work right now. I don't know. But if they don't, that may be somebody you want to bring in. And of course, when you do, there's the issue of how much is it going to cost, and how long will it take them to provide you a market study that says these are the project works. Maybe it'll be apartments. Maybe it'll be some version of pickup retail. And by pickup retail, I mean like Amazon, pickup points, things like that. I don't know. That's not my deal. But once you settle on this is what we want our plan to say is okay, then we come in and draft. And in terms of our end of the deal, that's probably a couple months.
Okay. So I just want to make sure I understand. So if we as an agency decided to review and maybe start figuring out some capital improvement projects that we would like. So I'm seeing this in two different lights. And we want to say, this is what we think we would like to propose. This is the work we want to do. And option one, we would go to you saying, hey, from what we understand, what you've currently drafted, is this follow those rules? And we're not getting ourselves in trouble.
Sure, we can do that. Absolutely. And we do it all the time.
But in the same time, or even down the line, we could say we want to amend this. And by the way, when we amend it, we make sure this thing we've already started is still
in it. Sure,
right?
Absolutely. If you'll pardon the analogy, I call it the walking and chewing gum at the same time model. So yes, you don't have to freeze all action in order to take new action or additional action.
Yeah,
so if there are things,
having to wait another year,
if there are things that you think that you can do right now and you're unsure, it may be Bill can look in the plan and tell you, but if not, I'm sure he can reach out to us and say, hey, do you think we can do this under a current situation? And I will say yes or no.
Okay.
Anybody else? Question, comments? Mr. Gilmore, do you have any comments?
I agree with what Cliff said, and I'm going to come back to a very basic point. Market drives everything. You have to see what the market is. You have to come up with a toolbox that's necessary to help the market development area if those guys think that they can make money. And the other side of the coin is the vision plan that you have is really good. And you've taken that and you've looked at that and the ways and means to take that vision plan and meld it into a revised plan, taking into consideration everything that has to be done, is the right step. The other thing that I agree with him on, and we talked about this, and it's part of my scope, to talk to your city councilman and your mayor to see where that goes. You've got an election coming up that's going to change who some of those characters are in a good way, some of the actors, I should say, rather than characters. And that's also going to make a big difference. And we're on a mission to develop a scope and a job description to hire a new permanent person that can work to help address all the communications issues and other things that have been described in the last few months. So we're on a good path forward here. And the work that Cliff's done is excellent because it helps stage to take it there. You have everything in place to simply take it and put it to the next level. And he's right about market. Market controls everything. But we know there's some folks that are interested in developing in Jacksonville Beach, and we know there are tools that are available to help them get where they need to be as well. So that will be my comment on that. So thank you, Cliff, and thank you for everyone on this.
Sure.
Jeff, and then Francis.
I would just concur 1000% with what Jim just said. I think that was excellently stated.
Francis?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one more question of Jim. So Jim, I'm assuming you saw the stuff that the Shepherd Group sent over?
Only tonight. I've not seen the full package.
I would be curious as to your professional thoughts on our ability to at least get some action items and capital improvement discussions even on board, even with city council, current council or not. If you think that it is layman's term enough for us to get it.
Well, I'm going to come back to your action that you took on the budget tonight, Francis. You made some really concrete steps in the budget on some stuff, the things that you want to see start happening right now. And it's general items, maybe. We look at elevated maintenance above and beyond what the city might be able to do. So you took some really strong steps in that regard, including increasing the amount of certain budget items in your budget next year, which you're going to take to the city council, which will give you even more flexibility to start making this happen. Winning takes longer than losing, and we want to be able to win with the right path, but and patience is also a virtue, but we don't need to be waiting another year for all this. We can have it all.
I'm just curious if you don't mind just looking at it and telling us if you think that.
I'd love to. I'm looking forward to looking at it. I know it's good work. I know the basis of where it came from and some of the basis that's been done now, and we can take it then to the next step.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Paytow. Gary.
in reference to the, doing a new plan, I think you'd be looking at something in the range of 6 to 9 months to do, depending on how focused you could get the firm in reference to doing that plan. I think that's what you're looking at. That doesn't mean that we can't get started on some initial projects that are important for the downtown district, and then correlate that with an overall plan. I think it would be important for us to sit down fairly soon with city council and the city manager, because they've been doing citywide focus groups to try to understand what the citizens would like to see within the city of Jacksonville Beach, but also a lot of the conversation was in reference to the downtown district. And I think we need that input. We need to understand what input they've been receiving, so we can put that into an overall game plan that correlates and coordinates with where the city wants to go ultimately. That's all I have.
Anyone else? All right. I guess we're on hold, and we'll figure out what we're going to do moving forward. I do appreciate what you've done for us so far.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Am I dismissed, or do I need to stick around? I'll do whatever. I just need to know.
I hope we're all dismissed.
I think you're. I think you are dismissed. Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience.
But
Thank
let
you
me,
all. It's our pleasure.
before Cliff leaves though, if I may, Mr. Chairman, just to make a statement. We can move on a lot of these things very quickly with a concentrated, focused effort. I know, Gary, you talked about a new plan, 6 to 9 months, maybe, but I don't really think so. We just got to stay focused and move quickly on all these items. And I think everyone is in agreement to do that. So I do want to say that. The steps are there. It's now just bringing them together. And Cliff has identified those. So let's simply get it done.
Well, I agree with you, but I think between now and the end of September, the city council is going to be all about the budget. And so us trying to get in front of them is probably going to be, it's probably not going to happen. So we're looking at something in October.
Then there's
all right,
election.
once again.
You're saying October for, excuse me. I was just trying to get some clarity. In October for a meeting with city council, is that what you're referring to, Art?
Yes, yes.
I see.
Because they had to have the budget done by the end of third quarter, because October 1st is new budget.
Right.
And I don't want to be the anchor in this, but you meet with a seated council in October and then 3 members change 3 weeks later. So it just happens to be, that's the time, that's the political time frame we're in right now. So there's a lot of things could change between now and the first of the next year. I'm not discouraging the meeting at all. I do think that the CRA just needs to get together without city council and talk about what maybe some of the low-hanging fruit is in this consolidated plan, because there are things we can, like they said, we can move forward while we're also contemplating, hey, do we want to do a major plan rewrite, or do we have enough identification with what's available on the table? And we may just want to, or you may just want to suggest, hey, let's just add several amendments. We don't maybe necessarily need to do a total rewrite. So, but that's something I think the CRA can get together, workshop format, and discuss sooner rather than later.
I can't believe of all 9 people in front of me that you were the one suggesting another workshop.
Yeah, I know. Trust me, I just realized it came out of my mouth.
I think there's power in us spending a little bit of time together to make sure we're one united front when we do address the council. So I think having a group one, like Bill's saying, in October instead of going to council first makes sense. So I'd second that if that was an actual vote.
I wasn't planning on going to council by October. I was just saying that we can't even possibly think about it before October. All right, gentlemen, Cliff and Jake, thank you very much. I think we got courtesy of Florida visitors. If there's anybody still on there before we adjourn. But gentlemen, thank you for your time and your effort.
It was our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Jim. Taylor.
Kendra, do we still have somebody on the line that wants to speak to us, courtesy of floor?
I'm going to check. Mr. Marsh, are you still available? Does not appear so.
Okay, anything before we adjourn? Mr. Gary?
Going back to Bill's comments, I wholeheartedly agree with his comments about how, our upcoming meetings and so forth. The other thing I'd like to encourage is maybe in the month of September, have a mid-month meeting where we can sit down with each of the different divisions, departments of the city, police, public works, parks and rec, and let's understand what exactly they're going to be doing as part of CRA work for this next year. Because I'm not sure I know exactly what we're going to be doing, but what are we going to focus on for this next year to try to improve both of the districts? And it would be good to get a report from them based on the new budgets that are coming forward as to physically what they're going to be doing. And if there are certain things that we're not seeing done that we need to have done, we can relay that to them at that point in time and make sure that we've got a good, solid foundation for what we're going to do this next year. And then at the same time, we can start to talk about some of the low-hanging fruit that's out there. What is important to the CRA? How do we move those projects forward so that we can get them done, hopefully fairly quickly? And, once we move down the road a little bit more about the vision plan, we can then discuss whether or not we need to do a full rewrite or not. But at least let's get the basis for everything started. That would be my recommendation. And just quickly, I haven't seen anything happen with the construction fencing. I thought we were going to get the construction fencing cleaned up and revised in the downtown district. Nothing has happened in reference to that. And really like to see something done with that. There were a couple of other small points like that that we had talked about that just seem to be hanging out there that aren't getting accomplished.
Quick polling for Sam. Are you for doing better construction fencing in the downtown area? Yes or no? Sam?
I would defer to the other members first.
I'm fine with doing fencing
Francis?
and fixing the fencing. If you're asking, would I be opposed or for beautifying fencing, I would be for.
Jeff?
Clearly for, and I guess I was surprised when I heard the comment that the relatively attractive fencing they used to have on that project was taken down because of the sign ordinance. I can't believe that was the case, but
It is accurate.
Well, kind of one of the things that Cliff said when he was in his talk, and that I've said before, and as Francis did last meeting, sometimes you got to do your homework outside of this meeting so we don't have meetings that last 3 hours long. And Gary, I am giving you the permission to speak for the group on the fencing. If you want to meet with the city manager or somebody else, you're speaking for us because you got our consensus that we think it's a good idea.
I'm more than willing to do that, Art. And I had tried to do what you suggested, which was to meet with Public Works on a couple of other issues and things. But Public Works basically is saying, well, we need to go back to the city manager and have a conversation with him before we can even talk to you. And if that's the case, then there's not much I can do. And I haven't heard back from Public Works at this point in time as to whether or not I can even sit down with them and have a conversation so that we can understand what projects they're looking at doing and what's going on with some of these projects.
Bill, can you facilitate a meeting with Public Works with Gary, or do you need for me to do that?
I can do it. I can do that, sir.
All right, so you and Gary talk to each other and you'll facilitate that meeting?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anything else? All right.